Oh, hey there, guys. We are here today, back with another episode of the podcast. We've got Plumsion on today. We are going to be talking about the new player experience. But firstly, what we'll do is we'll have a little tie into the last episode where we spoke with Evo about the veteran experience. Plumsion, would you class yourself as a veteran in this game?
I probably would now. Yeah, I've been going since the Legacy of Fire. Just at the end of the Legacy of Fire is when I started playing. So yeah, I think a veteran is level 2. I'm level 2,500 now, so I think that's probably enough hours wasted away.
Yeah, I
to call
mean,
myself a veteran.
that is one thing we discussed with Evo is how would you class what a veteran is? So you'd think after a certain number of levels that class you a veteran, or is it game experience? Is it, just interested to hear your thoughts on that?
I think it's a little bit of both, but I think you've got enough experience in the game once you've got to about level 500 that you're probably not going to learn much else. I think 500 is... What's 500 take you? It's going to take you a few weeks to get there at least.
That's an interesting take.
Yeah, we were in slight disagreement with that, where yes, there's a multitude of factors that make a veteran, and we didn't think level was one because players nowadays have the capability to hit 500 levels in one season if they really wanted to, and we see that. And does just 3 months worth of experience make you a veteran?
Well, I think being sort of destroyed by monks and sort of run over by winged hussars and stuff enough, and 500 levels is enough to get you up to being a veteran, to be honest.
Yeah, I think that is a fair point. But it kind of all brought together. There's a multitude of factors. You've got starting level means you unlock more things. Just by playing the game, you're going to have a better barracks, you're going to have better units, but you just don't have the access to a lot of the stuff that people of level 1,000, 2,000, 4,000 have, such as the bank of doctrines to put on key units.
To be fair, I will agree with you there. You are right. Because I don't think a level 500 unless they've got a very large wallet, won't have every single unit unlocked like probably all of us. I don't know if you guys have every unit unlocked, but I've just got my last unit that obviously was the new cav, and that's every unit. I don't have anything to unlock at this current point in time.
Yeah, I mean, I've been playing since beta, so I have one of every single unit even leveled up in my barracks, so I have no issues there. But for new players, which we're going to be talking about a lot in this episode, it's not the easiest thing to go through.
So the reason we particularly wanted to talk to you is you've done a number of videos now where you create a fresh account and you kind of have plotted through one of the most up-to-date explorations of what a new character will go through. Yeah. And we saw a matter of weeks ago, the My.Games released a survey, and one of the questions when you work your way through that survey is what level bracket are you? And you saw there was one that was 0 to 100, 1 to 200, 100 to 200, 200 to 500, and then 500 plus. Yeah. So the veteran experience, almost by what My.Games are defining it, is 500 plus. But there are key stages that a player will go through, and I think you've got probably the best experience to talk about that. What do players first encounter nowadays in season 15?
I initially... Most of my new player videos have started because someone on stream asked me a question, and I think it's quite nice to have something to go to, like YouTube. Someone asked me what weapon should I play the other day, and so I made a 52-minute video of going through every single weapon, every single skill that you shouldn't use, you should use. But in terms of what you the new player experience, the start from 1 to 20, you're against AI, and I don't think a lot of new players actually know they're against AI. So it's a bit of a shock to reality when you go from, killing 16 people or what you think is 16 people in a game. And then suddenly you get shoved when you get to 60, I think, where you start seeing, or you do see some players before then, but maybe 1 or 2 on each team. And the rest are still AI. But then suddenly there's a big drop off where you suddenly get put in our bracket. And you've suddenly run over by winged hussars or something like that. You have very minimal units, and you have no idea what's going on. I think it's probably a big reason why people don't continue onwards with it, because they suddenly hit, I think it's 100, where you suddenly get put in with all of us lot, and you're not gonna survive that long with that minimal experience and the minimal units they give you, to be honest. So it's a rough one. It's a rough one, but my main goal with the new player videos was to let people know what they're up against, and to take advantage of playing against AI, because those battles are classed as those players or those AI you're killing are classed as players. So any challenges you need to unlock on the seasonal passes, seasonal units count towards that. So if a challenge says Treb 200 or like artillery 200 troops, now in a normal battle that might take you a few games to do. You can do that so easily in an AI game. That's one
good point. Actually, never thought about that.
You can, from that 1 to 100 should be where a new player needs that knowledge to be right. I need to be looking at taking a picture of what challenges I need to do, and you can just smash them out. Like I made a Smurf and unlocked monks at about level 25 or something like that. But obviously I only got to the renters because I just needed them for the video. But it didn't take long. That's the whole way through the sort of shotgun pike unit that they put in and whatever.
That's
so
pretty
it doesn't
crazy. 25 levels for that's pretty damn quick. But again, you've
really
got the
doesn't
knowledge, though, haven't you? And these new players
exactly,
won't have that knowledge.
That's what I tried to do. Is just give them that little bit. I think because it's something that people don't realize is they just go and level as fast as they can and not realize don't pop those hero experience cards. Let's stay at level 1 to 100 as long as I can.
Yeah, and I think that is one of the difficult things, though, with that is tying into last episode as well, is that it's so hard to actually make these guides because by the next season that's outdated. When it comes to, like you said, about going through all the weapons, what skills to use, what not, that could change by the next season. And then now your guide is outdated. And so it's so difficult for new players because they won't, unless someone's putting in the work even every couple of weeks, because patches change as well, unless someone's putting that work to update them every couple of weeks, those guides are out of date as soon as they come out, basically. And a lot of time, Evo even said that his guides are out of date before he even put them out, because by the time he published it, the patch had come and changed again.
Yeah, I mean, if I put out a glaive sort of guide, maybe like a few seasons ago, it'd be very different to what it is now. So,
and that's why I think it's so different with new players. And I think as a new player, especially in this game more than any other game I've ever played, is you need to get into the community as soon as you can to get the knowledge from these experienced players. And it's something that's severely lacking at least on EU1, is that you don't have a lot of experienced players that will put in the time to help out new players. Like, it's just not there.
They are out there, but what are the chances of the new players finding them is another really difficult one. We mentioned prior to the podcast starting that the game's changed so much over the years we've been playing.
Yeah.
Do you remember what your first leveling experience was when you first found the game, and what kind of kept you playing?
I had a weird one because I came from World of Warcraft. I was one of those, I think it was Battle of Azeroth sort of just left that game after that. That was a long time. I'd been playing since vanilla, so it was a big kind of jump to a new game. And then one of my friends showed me Conqueror's Blade, and I initially got into it and then kind of jumped around a few games, and it was stuck in my head because I really liked I always had this fantasy that with things like Rome Total War and stuff like that I would love to actually be in the battle, not just watching it like a god from above. I want to be there with the troops, and and then obviously Conqueror's Blade came around, and you're in the battle. You're there. You're not just looking and directing people. You're with your men. I thought it was
a unique game.
Yeah, it's so unique, and it kind of hooked me. And like I played one game, and then I obviously logged off, and I just kept thinking about it. And then eventually, I started playing it basically full time, and I haven't really picked up any games. I've dabbled in like New World and stuff, but I always end up coming back to Conqueror's Blade. There's it's always got this draw that it's simple. I like it, and yeah, there's definitely things I would like to update and change and stuff like that. But the game is so unique that I think, and I just don't think enough eyes has seen it to sort of go, oh my god, that's such a cool concept. So yeah.
Out of curiosity, is that friend still playing the game?
He still plays. Yeah, I wouldn't call him like a big gamer. I mean, he's sort of that guy that would jump on, let's say if he had an Xbox, jump on Call of Duty for a few games after work, and then that would be it. He's that sort of guy. Yeah. So he got a gaming laptop, and he just kind of jumps on for a few games. And I sort of took the reins. I think when he got me into the game, he was about level 300, and he's only level about 800 now. And I'm sitting quite a far ahead. But yeah, he doesn't really have the same time, and I've sort of very much committed into it with like the streaming and YouTube and everything like that, because I'm kind of passionate about the game, and I really want to see it succeed and be on a higher step. When I remember first seeing it on Twitch, and I really couldn't believe that it only had like 100 people viewing it. That I was like, it's literally medieval Fortnite in a sense, without obviously grabbing the boxes and stuff. But you know what I mean? It could be to that stage.
Just grabbing heroes instead with them all, right?
Yeah, just grabbing heroes with them all.
Or opening boxes in death matches.
Yes.
What season did you start? What was
like
Legacy
of Fire?
Legacy of Fire.
I think that's season 5. Is it season 5?
Was that when they first introduced the flame unit, wasn't it?
Flamethrowers, yeah, flamethrowers.
Yeah.
I remember them.
A pretty big season for you to come in then, because obviously before that there was no unit like that. So you came in not knowing the old.
Right at the end of that, it was about the last 2 weeks of that season.
So you came in with flames just being there as a standard, which I think it would be an interesting point of view, because you wouldn't have been there before, where it was just all heavy melee. There was no range played. It was, and then all of a sudden you're just seeing it from that point of view with just flames.
Do you know how cool that is for a new player to see someone pull out flamethrowers? It was really eye-opening.
Oh my god!
Yeah, you really get that, and I was like, I want those, and that I think that's something I think they need to get back to in a way. Is I remember looking at units and being like, and not just because it was powerful, just because it was like cool.
It was interesting. It was
interesting,
game changing, and yeah, it was
phenomenal trailers as well. Like the cinematics around it.
Oh my god, I remember seeing it. And that goes with like the Falcos as well. I remember looking at those and being like, oh, I really want those, and I really want flamethrowers, just because it was like really good. They were kind of, at this time, it was unobtainable because I was a new player and whatever, and had no idea how to get there and whatever. And they didn't have all the. I mean, did they have F4 back then? The catch-up system? No, they didn't. So there was none of that to sort of get me up to speed with anything or whatever. So, but it was still one of those things that kind of kept me engrossed, because like eventually I will have flamethrowers. Turns out I'm terrible with them, but
they take a lot of getting used to, because again, it's just so different to any other unit.
Yeah, it's so
that's going from what you said. That's one thing for me about the game that's really exciting as well, is that there are so many different types of units, and you sit there and you think, what? There's like 120 odd different units now.
Yeah,
but you still can play so many. Like I'm so enjoying this season at the moment, because the meta is in one of the most balanced states it's ever been, and you can pick up almost any unit and play it to a decent level. Yes, there's still strong meta units that will be better just because they're in the meta right now, but you can play almost any unit you want to and still do well with it.
Yeah, and I think also I like the fact that some units benefit other classes. Like we've seen the synergy, obviously maybe a bit too heavy synergy, but between Maul and Monk. Maul and Monk is like a seriously strong combo, but then as a dual blades, if I run monks, I don't really get on as well as a heavy armor would with them.
Yeah, they're definitely a frontline unit.
Yeah, you've got to have. I think it really helps to have a class that's got a sort of direct knockdown with monks. So like in terms of poleaxe, short sword, long sword at a push,
just being able to get in that front line and support them. But then having said that, though, with the dual blade, you've got obviously the Hashashin unit they brought out works very well.
Loving it. I didn't like them for a long time, and I've literally this season started using them, and I'm having such a good time with them.
Yeah, and again, they play so different to most of the meta units as well.
Oh,
so it's so much fun to try to mess around with them, and that's one thing I do like about the game, is that, well, at least now compared to what it used to be, it's so easy to swap around between classes and things that if you want to try new stuff out. Yeah. It has changed a little bit this most recent season with the Reforge, because obviously you don't have the good gear anymore that people have saved up.
Yeah, that was a big shock.
You can swap so easily between classes, which is really nice in this game.
Did you guys go through the shock of that you have like you have best in slot gear one day, and then the next day you get in and it was like all of this legendary gear is about to go blue, even though better stats, granted, but.
So I had some of the best legendary boots in the game, plus 25 leadership, almost max stats and everything. Now they're useless. Like as soon as the Reforge came out, they're useless, because they're still like decent, but that I could get a purple in the Reforge system that just had much better stats, because it had like plus 2,000 health or something on it, which is just so much better.
But saying that, I do actually like the Reforge system. The only thing I want different in it is to like actually be able to get the stones from sieges as like a random drop, so we can actually do sieges to farm stones. Instead of having to wait for events or like I just think it should be.
Because it would encourage more people to play.
Oh, 100%. Imagine us being able to go on, and you would actually feel like I'm going to do like 5 or 6 sieges now, because I really want to farm that maybe get a few stones from that. Maybe a guaranteed 1 stone on a loss, and then 3 stones for a win, something like that.
Well, they have an
I think
exchange
it
event,
might
right?
be a bit much, but yeah, there should be
Yeah,
something.
something like, or maybe like a just a random chance, a high random chance of getting them. Because I really think there needs to be an incentive to do siege instead of just to do siege.
Yeah.
Granted, we're all happy to do siege, but if there was the extra thing, like we're not going to siege going, I'm hoping I'm going to get the epic schematic or the blue schematic. That is just, oh wow, I got one. You don't actually ever know when it's coming about. And I just think it would be quite nice to have something, maybe even not even the stones, some sort of currency that you're working towards that allows you to buy the stones, essentially, maybe,
like an exchange event for it.
Yeah, like an exchange, just something that every siege you get one, or for winning, or you get one for, just an incentive to play, really, I think would be a good thing. And
it's
with a
something
reward.
we spoke about it in the last one as well. It's like ways to encourage players to play the game more, because a lot of the events historically have just been you log in, you get the reward. You didn't have to play the game. Whereas the one thing that I said they've been doing really well recently is the events are, you have to win 10 times in the new game at like the right act mode, or you have to kill so many people, or you have to open so many chests, encourage people to play the game more rather than just logging in, ticking a box, logging off again, which is what a lot of the veterans were getting into, that sort of frame of mind of just logging in, do your dailies, log off again.
I know players had alt accounts where they were level 300 and they'd not played more than 10 sieges on, because they just took the sign-in rewards every single day. They were still reeling off the F4 quests where they ended up with 5 million bronze for doing very little, and were able to pay off their weekly quests. And they just constantly were gaining levels, constantly had like decent gear, and on some occasions were able to craft an amazing item on that alt account and then sell it onto their main. And
yeah, I am.
Yeah, because it's one of the things that the community always says, isn't it? They say that it's a lot easier to craft stuff on a low level account, because it always seems to be the lower levels that get that perfect roll on their gear. And I've done it myself. I've made a new account and then crafted a piece of armor and got almost perfect stats on it, like as one of my first crafts. So there is that sort of theory in the community that the lower level accounts do have better luck when it comes to crafting. But you mentioned the F4 quest. Yeah, you mentioned the F4 quest, Adrian. So that's a big thing they brought in, which is, for me, has massively impacted the new player experience. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the F4 quest has changed twice. When it first got introduced compared to now, it's again very, very different. So players that had were lucky at what time they were playing had the opportunity to complete the F4 and then complete it again when it got reset. So there's almost is it worth investing my time in this if it's just going to get reset anyway? Or do I need to really grind this because it's about to be changed and I could then end up with a free gold unit without having to actually work for it?
Yeah, definitely saw an upturn in my bronze after, because I did the first one, of course, and then when they released the new one, so they're giving you like 80,000 bronze each one. It was mad, and so my bronze went from something like 3 million to 5 million just by completing it. I don't know how fair that is towards the new players, but I guess once you're at sort of the levels that we get to, it doesn't really matter that much, to be honest. But it was definitely nice to go through it again. It actually felt good as like a veteran player, let's say, to go through and actually have like a goal to be like, oh, I'll just finish all the F4s again. So that was quite nice as a little bit of extra content, to be honest.
Something else that got introduced with the latest round of F4s, which was requiring players to do almost training missions. So you had ones that specifically taught you how to use some of the arty, some other in-game mechanics like climbing ladders, pushing siege artillery. That if you're not shown, you've got absolutely no idea the mechanics behind.
Yeah.
And then you walk up and you play in those higher level sieges and you see players sliding down a ladder and you're like, what the hell have they just done? Why haven't they died? And there's the speed at which new players ascend the like knowledge tree or knowledge slope in this game is quicker than it was, but the peak is just still so far away. The F4 quest gets you on it, but
I remember when I first started playing, I don't think I knew how to launch a treb for about a month. I didn't know I had that capability. I just thought
someone taught you, is it?
When I was, especially when I first started playing it, I think they now give you potentially an F4 to show you how to do a treb. But I had no
there's like
idea.
three training missions I think there are. Because again, like when I first started, the only ones that there were is you had that you'd obviously load in, you pick a weapon, you'd fight that hero, and then you do that little mission where you're on the horse, you've got to hit all the straw men as you run around, and that was the only tutorial there was. Like there's literally nothing else there. Now you've got I think it's 4 you just said, right, and the missions that you've got, which do show you a few of these other things. But even then, there isn't really any guidance in this game for new players. You just got the quest, and that's all you've got to go from. And it's one of the biggest things. Obviously, I can sit there and go, oh, a new account's so easy. I can log in, I can get 3 tier 4 units within a week of playing. It's so easy, and I can be territory already. I can just get imp pikes, imp shields, and palace guards really super easily. But for a new player, they don't know that those units are the units they should go for. A lot of the time we're seeing new players going for range because they can sit there in the AI games. They sit there with like the muskets, the green muskets, and farm like 300 unit kills. Like, oh, these are really strong, and then they suddenly get into playing against other players, and they're like, actually, this is really weak. But this is all I've unlocked. I've thrown all my resources into this.
Yeah, they wasted all on range and muskets. Most of the people I talk to that are new, they always go for the longbows or they go down muskets, and they think they're having a great time with them. They find getting to play a game with like 3 players aside, and one of those players has a little bit more knowledge and just goes straight after their longbows, and they're dead in 2 seconds. So it is a bit of an issue. It doesn't give you anything to be like, maybe don't pick range straight away. But I think, it's just, I guess it's all a learning curve, and I think, you're going to put the resources in a better place next time.
Yeah, it's such a hard learning curve of this game, I would say, though, to be at a decent level. Like, if you have some small guidance from a friend or something, you can do really well early on. But if you go into this blind, there's not a lot showing you what to do. I mean, is it worth them, for example, say, locking the range tree until you hit a certain level? Probably not, because then that would probably encourage people to then force into that once they've unlocked it, thinking it's good. Like, is there some other option there?
This is the great unit. Yeah, it's locked.
This was locked, so I have to go for that when I unlock it, and then they actually realize it's bad. Like, how can they do that? Because like we touched on earlier, it's so difficult doing guides for this game because every season the meta changes a lot. Like we spoke, this is the current meta where you can play almost any unit, but if we look at like the top units, they change every season. Yeah. We look at how strong shield maidens were before, and now they can still be useful, but they're nowhere near as top tier as they were before.
I get on so badly with shield maidens. I used to love them. I had literally videos on them. They were so good, but they were little. I felt like they were a bit strong because you could just roam. I just roamed around with block on, just doing this, and they would just kill everything for me.
Yeah, but I think that again, that's just with mauls being so prevalent this season. Mauls are really good into shield units, and shield maidens are really weak if you knock them down, and maul has that knockdown for them. So
yeah, and but I quite like the way where like a lot of the units are like shield maidens. They're still useful. You still can do really well with them. But you can't just run around and think. You actually have to play them properly, like support them.
You can't just 1v15 with them.
Go in with your maul or your poleaxe, or I mean, definitely they're suited towards heavy armor better because they're front line, in my opinion. But you need to be going in with your sort of Lockerbie strikes or something like that, knocking the people down in front of you, and then your shield maidens come over and just clean them up.
Yeah, they're what I'd call like a midline unit. So you don't want to completely frontline with them, but if you follow in the frontline fight, you're in there with them, you can do a lot of work with them.
How do we think the new players tackle the season lock as we work through it? Because one of the things that we as veterans, if we loaded in now and we join, say, at the end of a season, we'll rush towards our favorite gold unit, unlock it for free, and use that in sieges and territory or whatever. But if you go at the start of the season when you can only go to blue units, I've particularly noticed this season blue units are used even more in high level sieges than they were, because previously they were this guy's bought 4 blue units to my top level rank game, he's a troll, and now it's still like, oh, he's a bit of a troll, but he's still able they're still able in some cases to do quite well.
I would say part of that is because we don't have the extra leadership this season either, because that massively changes the warband builds as well.
Yeah,
because we do see a lot of tier 4, a lot of blue units this season. We've seen quite a few mixed in, because a lot of people run like a gold, a purple, and a blue, because you just don't have the same extra 100 leadership you had last season.
See, I'm loving the Jang Justs at the moment, the dagger throws. They, because we've seen quite a resurgence of halberdier sergeants. They're like a really solid unit. I love them. They're great. And actually, one of my units I'd advise to every new player is halberdier sergeants, because you can just place them in F2, place them there, and you're safe. You're relatively safe against cav. You're good against infantry. You're just kind of you're a jack of all trades. You're good against everything. Range obviously is a bit of an issue, but yeah. So that would be my unit that I'd say for a new player to go to. But the Jangjus, so I just bought them out to deal with Fortebraccios and Halberdiers, and they completely clean them as a blue unit, completely clean them up. So blue units still have their thing, and Sons of Fenrir as well. Sons of Fenrir are probably the best blue unit out there. So yeah, they definitely
I would
have a
counter
place.
that with Zycalian Militia. I would counter that with.
No, sorry.
Very strong.
Yeah, they are very. Yeah. No, I will agree with you there. Nothing more annoying.
And we see units being rotated in depending on what kind of stage of the season we're in. Where Zycalian are strong whenever, but Incendiary Archers are very strong in blue tier. Like the Cudgel monks are actually pretty strong in blue tier. Blue Halberdiers were
Incredible.
They were a meta unit in CBL, and that's when you can choose any unit possible. So there is serious depth, and it's got to the point where players are now recognizing that strength that these units had, and we just weren't willing to play them because why would we? Why would you pick 170 leadership when you can take a 230 that just does the job better? So there's all these new units, and they have different roles in the rock paper scissors world of Conqueror's Blade, and these new players are just thrown in the deep end of saying, where'd you start? You unlock the unit that you think is cool. I spent a fair amount of time popping into some Twitch streamers that were relatively new to the game, had 2 or 3 people watching. Just like, hey, how's it going? How long have you been playing for? And they'd say about 2 weeks. Like, what unit are you looking forward to? And it was always what they thought looked cool. Because the game is so visual. They were all playing in cinematic mode, and they were all making the classic mistakes that they haven't been shown otherwise.
Well, exactly. That's a good point, though. Nobody will show you that stuff. They won't know that unless they pair up with better.
Seeing a lot of that lovely kill cam action.
Oh, the kill cam.
Whenever you make a new account, you forget to turn off that first time. The first time you ult on a dual blade or you ult on the poleaxe, you're like,
oh my god. It's incredible. That poleaxe thing, and you're like, whoa, where's my camera gone?
I don't remember when I learned that you could turn that off, but it was a long way into my career.
It was too late. It was too late for me. It was definitely took me a long time. But I thought it looked awesome, and it does look awesome. Like the first time I saw it was on a poleaxe because I played a lot of classes before I kind of settled on dual blade. I remember seeing it and I was like, that for a new player must be quite a sick experience to suddenly see yourself from the side angle. But then you realize in a real game, it's a total disadvantage to actually have that. And most of the time, it's completely blocked out by many units next to you.
Or a wall that you're ulting next to.
Or a wall,
into.
And if you're in the middle of like a unit with cover commander, you just see nothing. So Temple, if you want to just complete your side of when you first started the game, it was like. I know we talked about some major changes. If you have any other examples than the one for the previous episode.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, the big changes, we kind of touched on it in the previous episode, but it's the difference of how much easier it is now to unlock units, to level up units. You know, there was a huge experience because, I mean, it changed even before you jumped on. So back in the good old days, it was like 3 million experience to level up a gold unit. Like it was you would take 6 to 8 months to unlock a gold unit to start with, and then it would take you a good month to actually level it because it just took so long. Either you just played sieges and leveled it there, or you would just sit in Expedition 3 and just do like 20, 30 of those in a day just to grind the XP for it. Because there was no shared XP, there was no XP tokens, there was no like unit sharing in the house, there was none of that stuff that could support you to level up faster. So it was such a grind. So I do think that the new players now have it a hell of a lot easier, and it is so easy to level accounts down. They get a lot of free stuff, but they have no guidance. And that's the biggest thing for me. There aren't many guides out there because, as we touched on, the game is ever evolving and ever changing. The meta is constantly changing, which I think is really good and healthy for a game to have that long-lasting sort of experience. But it just makes it really not user-friendly for new players. Like, it's not a new player-friendly game because everything is changing constantly. There are no up-to-date guides because it's a lot of work to maintain them.
Yeah. I do remember back in the day, it was kind of a big thing to see a gold unit in the battle, in terms of how much it cost to repair them, as well as it was like I'd see a lot of blue units, and then it was like, oh wow, a purple unit's out, and then if you saw a gold unit, this is when I first started playing. So maybe it was because I was in low sieges. But if I saw a gold unit, it was like, oh my god, it was like an unattainable thing, and it was a real sort of run moment if they were on the other team. You know, if I saw hussars or something coming over the crest or something like that, it wasn't the fact I was going to survive. It was like, how long am I going to survive until this guy runs over me?
And especially back then, gold units were a lot stronger as well.
Yeah, expensive as well.
They were more expensive. They were a lot stronger. They could do a lot of work, but also they were also weaker in a way where they required more skill to get the use out of them. I would say for a lot of them, the game has definitely been made a lot more user friendly. But just the start, I feel, is just not a very healthy experience for new players if they don't have a friend there like you had showing you the ropes when you first start.
In terms of combating sort of that, and like obviously if we were to build a start that would actually be sort of suitable to new players to get them up to speed and whatever, what would you sort of suggest for that?
I mean, I think there's sort of two sides to it, right? It's like, what can the developers do for that, and what can we as the community do for that?
Yeah.
So I feel like it's a different one because one of the biggest things is just the population of the game, right? Because matchmaking, we touched on it in the last episode, is such a big thing with this game. If there was a much bigger population, you would have a lot better matchmaking with players of sort of even levels together. Whereas now, like you said, you hit level 100, you play against the top players in the game. Yeah. Because there just isn't the player base there to have a better matchmaking. You even see it in ranked. Again, we touched on it previously as well, but it's like you could miss the first 2-3 weeks of ranked, but you play that first game, you're matched against the top 25 in ranked. Because it's just there's not that player base there. But then is it down to us as the players to have that better system in place to support these new players? You know, there aren't really any houses that are there that will take in fresh new players and show them the ropes that are run by veterans that actually know the game. It's like any house with veterans, they all join the top houses, and it's, you know, you have to be level 500, level 1000 plus, whatever it is, to actually be able to join, or you need to have that experience. You know, there's not many houses that will take in fresh players that know all these tricks, know all these things that can support them as they go through.
Yeah, I think there's the other inherent problem is, I remember when I started playing, if I wasn't playing my own, I was obviously joined up with a friend that was way higher level than me. So then I get dragged as a level 25, 30 into a full scale thing. And I was like, wow, this feels so different to what I've just experienced. And I don't know if there would be a way of being able to like either de-level or sort of depower someone to be able to join in with your friend there. Because I always, when I invited new friends to the game, I had to find myself going and making a new character to play with them.
Yeah, and then you're not unlocking the stuff on your main character, so it's punishing you for doing that.
And then I don't care about the character or whatever, and I'm not unlocking anything, and I don't get to use any of my units. Maybe if you were to allow them to come in, you would lock some of their units, so they're not allowed to use the big boy stuff. But I don't know. I think there's definitely a sort of a question to be asked with that, if there was a way, because I think a lot of players get into this game through their friends or through.
I would say at the moment, yeah, because it's something we touched on last time as well. There isn't much marketing at the moment. There's
nothing.
You don't see it at all. Because we were saying before, and like again, time back to the previous episode, a lot of the German community came in through one German streamer that streamed the game back in beta, and that's where they all came from. You know, we had even like the Mountain was playing the game back in season 5, wasn't it, or season 6? We used to have some big players. Dyrus from League of Legends played it as well. But recently, you don't see anything like that. I haven't seen any adverts anywhere for this game, whereas I used to see them almost daily.
They need to do a big push to get someone like Asmongold to do one stream with it and see what happens.
But will they put the money into it to do that is the question.
No, and he probably wouldn't take it either.
And it's like, even if they did that, you look at, for example, when they did the Mountain, he was playing against AI anyway.
It was pointless.
We covered it last time with Evo, but you need to pair them up with a content creator that knows how to play the game, that show, and give them an account that has stuff unlocked already. You know, they can set up tournament accounts where you have everything unlocked. So why can't they do that for a streamer that comes in, so they can show people how to play the game?
I think we can tie this into the Lazy Peon video that you did a while back. Do you want to just talk about that briefly? Or?
Yeah, so I've been, because I was a WoW player, and originally Lazy Peon came from WoW, and obviously when I lost interest in WoW, I stopped watching, or like just kind of put it to one side. And I was just scrolling for YouTube one day, and I didn't know that he had done a Conqueror's Blade video, and I was like super excited because this is quite late into me making YouTube videos and stuff. This was only like maybe 4 or 5 months ago that I put this out, that I hadn't seen it before. So, and I just kind of watched that, and they obviously, they gave him a fully leveled account as well as a new account. But I just wanted to go over the top from somebody that I think at that point I would class myself as a veteran player when I made that video as well. I wanted to kind of watch that video and react to the side of it and just kind of fill people in on the stuff that I think he was getting, slightly wrong with it. I granted him, he did a great job with it, and even though he was a sponsored one, I think he was very fair about the pros and cons. But there was definitely stuff that I think he missed out with, sort of the more in-depth stuff and getting players involved. And I think obviously there was a moment where he's doing it and he's like, that was definitely a player that he killed. And you look at this thing and it's like, that's all AI. And you're like, that's just not going to give a thing. And then he gets put in, then he gets the full level account and put in with the real players. And obviously you see the real thing and he's just dead all the time. And then he's obviously playing range. He's playing short bow. And then he's like talking about the units. And he's like, oh, I'm just going to get all range because I seem to get on better with that because thingy. And you're like, because you're literally chucking your units in and just not playing them. You just press V and they go off and die. And it's like, I thought there was that. I think to make a review, to sell it to people, you almost needed more of a time in the game, actually like knowing what the units do and stuff like that. So I was purely a video like that. But I think for the time he had in the game, I think it was a fair review. But I think there was definitely you can't review it off of the hours that I think was put in. If I'm honest, I don't know what you guys feel about that. But
yeah, it's a difficult thing because it is a hard game to try and get someone in to play like that. Because if they haven't got hours and hours and hours in the game, they're not going to be able to play at a decent level to show off the game
and they're probably not going to enjoy it.
Exactly, and that's where we've discussed it many times in the past. It's like, do you pair them up with the content creator that can show them the ropes, but then how much time can they put in to actually learn stuff to be able to play at a decent level to show it off to their community? It's a hard game to sell when you don't have any experience in it. But once you have that experience, it is such a unique game, as we've said, and it's such a fun game when it works. And for me, one of the biggest things is the community. It's very toxic at times, but it is such a big draw to this game is how the community and how you can build such great friendships in this game, because you have to play together at like a top, especially coming from my experience at a top level, playing in these top tournaments, playing in Origin for 7 or 8 seasons now, playing in wherever it's before that as well, playing at this top competitive level. It's so much fun. You learn so much from it. You build some great relationships from that. But unless you throw yourself fully into the game, you're not going to experience that.
No,
and these streamers or these people that come in to do, these celebrities that come in to do it, won't get that experience, which is one of the biggest draws of the game. It's these big like houses and things like that, which you don't see for them. Like you don't see the streamers joining a house, interacting with people, and doing territory wars, all that kind of stuff, which for a lot of people is the main part of the game.
Yeah. They did for the reason I joined. To mention it again, I came when the Yogscast did their first sponsorship with them, and they had 3 or 4 of their main streamers stream the game for a couple of hours. They went, why don't we form houses? Yeah, let's do it. So they formed 3 houses, and they were the lieges, and the entire community descended upon the game. And from there, about 300 players stuck. And that's an entire alliance. They then dispersed between all the houses that they liked. They went to their native language ones. They grouped up and formed their own houses later on. And they ended up being a very, very successful one. And then they revisited it when they opened up EU5, where they then had, again, more people come in. And it meant that there was a decent influx of players early on in the season to then kickstart a new server in this case. They've done it in the past, and as a player, it worked. It's the reason I played. I went from being really into just like League of Legends and other games like that, Warhammer, and your example of Rome Total War, following the arrows flying over walls and things like that was exactly what I wanted. And then we find Conqueror's Blade, and it has all these things.
Except you're in it,
and you're in it. You're living it. And I remember excitedly messaging my friends at the end of a work day saying, are we logging in? Are we going to play some games? And just really, really excited to play. And the level progression, like every 10 levels, you got like a decent reward. And it felt like, oh, I want to keep playing. Can we all just play another 2 sieges or something? We're just going to level up then. And I don't know if that still exists. I really hope it does. But as a veteran, I can't see it. with the F4 quests. I feel like some of them are they happen without you even noticing, and the others you're not having to you're not encouraged to play the game as much to the same level.
Yeah, about 80% of them you don't actually realize you've done them. You just sort of are sieging and something's happened and you're like, oh, great, I've done that. And then you find a lot of new players get stuck on the last ones that are like, do a TW, and they're like,
use
is
a field
that?
camp is one of the worst ones for it, isn't it?
Yeah,
If
use
you're
a
not
field
in a
camp.
house, you're not going to know what that is. You're not going to, be able to do it.
And the amount, then it leads me on to why I made another video, how to do TW, was literally because I saw while I was doing TW, someone in chat said, how do I do TW? And I was like, oh, wow. So this is obviously trying to...
I was just going to say, it leads back to what we were saying earlier. It's like, when it comes to territory wars, when people start the game, they just go into cohorts because they don't know any different. Like, I would say 90% of the new starters just go and join the cohorts, and they don't know anything different than that because they don't have, again, go back to the point, they don't have these houses that are willing to take them in, to train them up and teach them the game, especially territory war-wise, from that point of view, because people are always like, oh, you have to be this certain level to join this house. There aren't many, there's not really any houses I know of that are let's just say, a sort of competent house that will take in brand new players.
Yeah, and I think also you'll find if you were lucky enough to get into a house, you'd probably be in Raid 8, where you're in mustering the entire time. If I mean, you probably will get in, but by that point, there's no real plan going on. Everyone's sort of running around like headless chickens, running over the point, getting calved, and that's going to look... I mean, actually, to be fair, I've got experience with this. I brought 3 of my friends that I got into this game to TW, and they all quit within the next week because they were like, they weren't in my... I was in sort of the group 1, 2, 3. So I was off doing a city, and they were in defense of a village with all the new players, and they got run over so badly that they quit the game. Afterwards.
If anything, I would do that the opposite way. If it was me leading that house, I would have the newer players in the city where you're not going to experience as much cav because they can't see the walls.
There was experienced players with them. I think it was just one of those. It was one of those ones where we had taken quite a lot of land, and then suddenly a lot of bigger houses came along and just steamrolled. And I think in their heads, like, they had taken time to sit down and do TW in the evening, like we used to do, like when we were raiding on WoW and stuff like that, taking an evening to do raid time, and then to just be instantly steamrolled, and then push to the next city and then steamrolled. And
again, I think that comes down to leadership of that house as well, though, right? Because for me, they're not utilizing those new players. Their advantage.
It did come down to leadership, but I think it also came down to sort of, I don't think my friends had played enough yet to understand what they were actually doing in that thing. They're not going to go and put grape shots down on the point. They're not going to go and use all the artillery, and they didn't have the units to really back it up. I think one of them was spear sergeants.
I mean, I would go back to saying that's down to the organization of that house at the time, because you can definitely get good use out of new players. Territory Wars is a lot down to numbers than it is down to skill, especially after that first fight. There is still skill involved, but a lot of the time numbers will just win because you have, most of the territory war fights I would say at top level are won because you wipe the enemy enough that you can push forwards because they don't have the rejoiners come back in. There aren't many fights that are won just because you get one good fight, push and hold it and then win, because normally the defenders have a huge advantage and come back with their numbers. So I would say that's more, again, down back to the point before where it's like you don't have the support there for those new players. Because I could quite easily sit down and say, look, this is what I want you to do. You've only got these units, I'm not expecting much of you, but this is what I want you to do. You place a siege here, you'd have that prep with them beforehand.
They did get the warning that they probably won't hold it. But also, I think it was probably, I probably shouldn't have had them come into it. I think what I really wanted to get them into TW, I more wanted them to experience what it was like. When you're all pushing and it's like, it's that big excitement when you get to the final point and you're all on it. Then that minute's counting down and you're just all diving on. You got people dying left, right, and center.
It's the first chance to have those big coordinated fights, isn't it? Because you don't get that in sieges.
And it took me probably a few TWs to get that experience, like just persevering through it, but getting wiped, losing, whatever. And then we have the first one, and then you get the bug for it, where you're really like invested in what TW actually is, a very different style of gameplay to what you would do in a normal siege, in terms of actually coordinating with other people and chucking like chucking units one way, going to grab another unit, and then having like almost 2 units out at the same time to distract, so you can go through that gate while they think you're over there. And it's I think I really wanted them to experience that, but unfortunately they just didn't have the best time. One of them still plays every now and then, but he's just had 2 children, so it's a bit harder for him now. So yeah.
Territory war experience when you're a new player. Temple mentioned just sheer numbers. When I first started, we were the only alliance with this Yogscast one that had 300 people online, and we took a village in our first territory war, and we then took a town in the next one, and the people we were fighting against were just like, what do we do against this relentless horde of people? And if you now think of the game, like 300 people having a town and a village is a ridiculous concept. You should have half
Everything.
a region.
Yeah.
I mean, and back then that's what it was though. I mean, even in beta, when you look at that, like when we were playing there, you wouldn't see alliances holding a massive large area. Normally it was like 2-3 towns maybe with a few villages. Now you don't even see people going for villages most of the time. It's definitely the main region. You just see people fighting for cities, because with the new system of the prestige, it's just not worth it going for villages if you're trying to compete for those cities, because they're just a sinkhole basically of prestige, because you take it, you earn a bit, but you will almost guarantee to lose it the next week, because no one fights for villages. No one actually commits to defending them, at least at the sort of the higher level, because like I said, it's just not worth it. So that's something that's a big difference now in territory wars as compared to what it was previously.
It's normally where you find the cohorts are in the villages. If you
you look at the main region, and cohorts held basically all the villages for the entire season until this week, because obviously it's now fighting for Daicheng when people don't actually care about the influence they hold.
Yeah.
So it's just held by cohorts, and a couple of small houses vying for it here and there, but they would just lose the cohorts anyway. So,
from personal experience, some of the best TW fights I've ever had were the last fief that was open at the end of TW. You've got 10 houses in there from one side, and then one defender is just clawing on, and they're some of the most fun you'll have, because it's so different to what a regular siege is. And that's where territory war, you mentioned the bug, that kind of competitive, we were so close to taking that, we can take the next one. Or, if we did the first 2 minutes differently, we'll buy ourselves more time and actually be able to get on the point later. So you kind of develop that bug, and I don't know how the new players experience it. We mentioned in the previous episode potentially having a locked region where only up to level 200, let's say 300, are allowed to take part in territory war there.
I think that's a
just
great
so they
idea.
can experience what the game is for that. And I think we then encounter the same issue with knowledge transfer. How do the experienced players transfer advanced TW knowledge into these players? And is there something in the game that already exists that could enable that, or would it have to be something completely new implemented?
Could you have a potential? Maybe you could have a potential sort of. It would have to be AI'd very well, but almost an AI leader, and like that, as you said, a little region that potentially it almost feels like you're in a house. Let's say as a new player, you're going around. So you get one. It shows you the open world, because I didn't know that exists for far too long. And so you're obviously taking a city, then you're going into the sort of top-down mode, off to the next one with this AI leader and other players. So he'll be like, okay, we're going to take this city, and then maybe one city you're on defense, one city you're on attack, and you're just taking this little area. It's almost like a TW tutorial island sort of job going on. But it means then you don't need to have somebody. You've got this AI that is giving them the sort of fundamentals of how it works. Maybe I don't know how easy it would be to program something like that to actually work.
They've got assets really similar to that already with the AI armies. So instead of having it where you have AI armies come and attack player-owned towns, you could have AI attacking AI, but you as players kind of piggyback on.
You're involved in it.
If you think of some other games as well, the Tyrant one, where it was in the Colosseum, where a player got to be that bigger, badass guy. Yeah. And in other games, like if we think about Battlefront, the Star Wars ones, where you sometimes had the option to be like a Jedi for a short period of time if you've done well. You give players like, do you want a trebuchet? Do you want a siege tower? And you then let players put them down, and it kind of like randomly distributes them, gives them new roles, makes them learn how to do it, gives them some artillery to shoot. And
I mean, you had it in the old the Nightmare Halloween defense one, where after a certain number of kills, you would get Scorpios just put directly into your inventory.
Brilliant! That's a great example
And
that
I
you
think
can add into that.
if you set it off at exactly the same time as TW, so they get used to the schedule, I think that'd be perfect. They just sign up for it, or they sign up for it, and then it tells them to go over to this place. So they have to leave the city like you would on a TW. Go to this little section of the world. It doesn't have to have too many things. Maybe 2 villages, 1 town, and 2 cities, or something like that. It doesn't have to be very big at all. Just enough that they have to go in and out cities. And then you just go over there, go into there, and then suddenly it all starts at the same time as TW. And as a new player, you get your F4 done. That is always the hardest one to do the TW, and then you just kind of get a feeling of what it's like. Maybe you could ramp up the AI just a little bit to make it a little bit, not just.
Well, you've got the ones from the bandit camps at the moment where they have like extra damage and extra health to what they normally have, right? So you just have something like that in there.
Or you could also ramp it up through the territory war. Like the first fight, if they win it really quickly, the next fight is harder units. And then it's like, okay, you've got a bit of a challenge as the player now. How many territories can you take in that hour?
And I don't think you should win all of it either. I think they should experience a defeat. I think it can't just be roll over all of this. I think they should have a really hard attack and a really hard defense at the end.
Well, an interesting one could be that, like, let's say one of the last targets, actual other players can join on the defense from like other houses or something. It could be an interesting way of doing it. Like maybe some high level players can load in to be that defenders on there. Maybe not all of them, but like a couple of them can load in or something.
This could be something that's probably a bit too advanced, but one of our friends mentioned that you could potentially have players from other servers come and join in territory wars on other ones. So you could maybe nominate a number of cohorts from EU1 that would end the territory war in EU2. They'd have their characters transferred over, so you can have a bit of an EU1 versus EU2 fight at the same time. It's a bit more difficult now that NA has only one server time, but having that ability to then kind of like, okay, we've kicked the AI into touch, we know exactly how to play against them. Oh, things are changing. Half of the team are now here, people. Half the team are AI. Just to again smooth the curve of how players are going to get to that end game territory war content, because that is probably what kept most players playing for long periods of time, was how fun territory war was. And the relationships, and like you work your way into the first 15, you work your way into the first raid, and you gradually improve and get better and better. But is there currently too big a gap between a level 500 and a level 2000? I think there currently is. It's just a bit too large, and there's no way of getting players from level 200 to that 2000 period or 2000 area that isn't just them getting the snot kicked out of them and ending up with a 40% win rate over 200 games.
I think there's also that thing with new players is also they obviously pick a weapon, what they want to play, and then their minds change at maybe 100 levels down the road, and it's going to take them a little while to get those skill points together to get rank 3 in a lot of the abilities. And so if you pick, I don't know, like a short bow or something, let's say, or dual blades, and then you head into TW and you go, oh god, okay, I'm really enjoying this, but I think I'd enjoy it way more as a sort of poleaxe or a short sword, where you can actually get on points and really hold them for a decent amount of time. It's I think the skill point thing can be quite a big kind of barrier towards people getting into these other things, because I think classes have a lot to it to sort of involved in this sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean, when I started the game, it was territory wars as you had to play short sword or you weren't playing.
I remember those days.
That's what it was. That you had to play this class or you just weren't going to be useful, because short sword was just so strong back then in territory wars, because you would stay alive as long as possible and hold points and be able to push through with your ulti, all that kind of stuff. You would see 99.9% of players, especially this, I was in Warehouse at the time, that you had to play short sword, and even you wouldn't even really see longsword either, because back then it just wasn't that strong. So it was basically play that class or get out.
To be fair, it is nice.
You don't see as much now.
It is nice to see a variation, and also must say it's very nice to see the longbow coming back.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a lot of longbows about lately, and it is. I mean, to be fair, they definitely deserve their time in the sun. They really
Yeah, I mean,
are.
I played longbow for like 3 or 4 seasons back in the early start of the game, and it was so much fun and it was so different. But it's changed so much since then, though. But you do see a lot now. I mean, one that you can sort of name off the top of your head is Pustoy. One of
Yeah.
the Russian ones. He's so strong with longbow. Like he will one shot you as a hero because obviously historically longbow used to play the explosive ult, but now they realize actually lightning, but you can
Lightning
actually
bolt
deal a
is-
hell of a lot of damage.
You've seen the Frosties about?
Yeah,
They've
we
got
have
like
Frosties
the
are good as well,
Frosties, Y. Yeah,
Yeah.
the two of those guys playing together. I'm like in most of their montages. It's basically Frosty featuring Plum with how much he kills me, and it's honestly, when both of them on you, I don't survive as a light armor. I can't.
Yeah,
I
I mean,
literally spend.
I think that is helped with the Reforge systems, all right, because I would say a lot of light armors, they focus more on their weapon first, not their armor. So they don't have the best armor, they don't have the best stats on there. Whereas you will have the good weapon. Whereas a lot of the heavy armors have focused on their armor first.
I tend to. I think at the moment with the reforging, I think potentially. I don't know if you agree with me on this, but I potentially think that light armor and medium armor needs not huge, just a little boost up towards. Just I don't want to bring anyone down. I don't want to nerf anything. Nerfing I think is bad. I think we should always be looking to bring things up. And I just think light armor and medium armor needs to be brought a bit more into line with.
Yeah, I mean it's something we have touched on previously
heavy
as
armor.
Well. We did touch on it previously because it is a point that a lot of people raise. Heavy armor had a much better start with the Reforge system because obviously a lot of their gear you can get much better stats on it on heavy armor. Just look at the health alone; you can get sometimes up to 2,500 more health on there overall, which is a huge buff.
Talking to a friend of mine yesterday, and he has 42,000 health. Considering like the other day, I had to go into a bit of toughness as a dual blades because I would kept getting one shot by what's called the Forge of War. It was literally because as a dual blades, if you go that you should need to do because you're meant to do as high damage as possible, you need to go full strength or like a bit at like 80% strength and a little bit of agility just for that penetration. But I'm left with 26,000 health. That is like when I'm going up against people with 42,000 health and 1,000 armor, it's like it's a lot to get through. And
especially now because you can get the extra toughness and armor and everything on your weapons now as well.
So, yeah, exactly. The way I see it is like obviously I've accepted as a light armor that I'm going to be squishy, but the payoff for that is obviously meant to be that you do quite high damage. You're like straight into it, and the down obviously it's not really adding up because I could do more damage on a heavy armor than I could on the light and take less damage. So I think it needs to be brought just up so we're a little bit more survivable, a little bit more health, and then same with medium armor. I've been seeing just like in sieges it's 80% heavy armor for me, and then obviously I've been seeing a lot of bows, but they're in a bit of a different state because they're back there somewhere.
Yeah, I think it ties in again to a point we raised before as well, which is that I think that heavily comes down to the metas that are different on booming and My.Games. Because booming historically has been very heavy light and medium armor classes, so they probably made these changes because they weren't seeing heavy armors as much. You see it from the tournaments, you see it from just looking at any streams and everything. They were predominantly a lot of heavy armors. And it's a similar thing with Maul that we mentioned earlier as well. Maul was not played on those servers at all. You would maybe see one in the occasional game because their meta is with the leadership doctrines. They have a lot of golden eras. They have a lot of heavy cav, which Maul is very, very weak into. And so that compare that to My.Games where it's historically very heavy armors, very heavy frontline units, shield units. Maul plays very strongly into that, and I think that's where a lot of these issues come. Is it's just that the meta is so different that they don't see that from booming side as the developers obviously, and is My.Games giving them a good enough feedback to show these issues to them that we're experiencing?
I think the Maul thing, I never really had a problem with Maul until they got that second ability to be able to fully charge something, so they can lead an ability into an ability. I don't think actually from a class design, it's very good, but it's just in the reality of being when they jump off a mountain, knock me down, and then go straight into an earth split and knock me down, and then straight into a what's it called, a maelstrom.
Which is now unCCable
that I can't kick. I'm just there like I've got 26,000 health. I'm dead on the earth splitter, and I can't. So it's literally on the floor again, dead.
This is one of the things we touched on last point as well. Is I think one of the reasons Maul is so strong is just because it is one of the easiest classes to pick up and do well with.
Yeah.
It doesn't require a lot of skill to be a decent Maul. If you want to be a top Maul, then yeah, you need a lot of skill to get into all the counter CCs and that kind of stuff, and counter playing other heroes. But you can be an average player, pick up a Maul, and be top of the leaderboard.
Yeah.
So that's part of the reason it's so strong. I think it kind of needed that a little bit because it was a bit underpowered, I would say, before. But I do think they overtuned it.
I think it could do with a few cooldowns in terms of Earth Splitter, especially being just bumped up to maybe 10 seconds cooldown instead of 8, or just something like that. It just seems to synergize way too well, and by the time you've got off the floor, it's back again, and you're on the floor again with that extended range rune as well. I'm like half a mile down the road, and I get hit by an earthquake.
Yeah, again, so you touched before, runes play such a huge thing as well, and that's where the Maelstrom one came from, because that was a rune previously that made the Maelstrom not be able to be CC'd. And again, we saw it with the patches for the Maul as well. So obviously, when they patched it, it didn't change anything on our version of the game because people weren't playing those skills that they changed. They changed the grab, which was something that people complained about 10 seasons ago when Maul first came out, but never got changed. But then they change it now when people complain about Maul, but that wasn't the issue. But then is that the disconnect between booming and My.Games? Are they seeing the different impacts of Maul there?
I think what they've done with the grab is actually absolutely fine. I think I now don't class grab as a overpowered ability. I think it's a good ability to grab someone out of there and turn them around. It's just before it was the way that they could sprint off, and obviously you couldn't catch them, even though they were carrying someone and their big Maul at the same time. And you're like, so it does make sense that they move a bit slower when they've got some big heavy gun on their shoulders. So,
and realistically, it's just an extra CC for them, right?
Yeah.
I spent some time talking to some content creators from Booming from the Frontier service this morning, and there's a real attitude difference between how they want to play the game and how we want to play the game. I think let's mention the short sword example when you said everyone with short sword, otherwise you don't play. You're not playing. Why are you here? Because you want to survive as long as possible. The attitude of the players on Booming is, well, if I kill him, he's dead. So I just want to deal as much damage in as short a time as possible. And it doesn't matter if I'm killed, I've misplayed. And if I kill him, I've done my job. It's not where we want to survive, we want to extend our fights and have long drawn out ones. They are explosive, very, very fast. They'll move very slowly, and then when the action kicks off, it just all goes, and then that's it.
Yeah, I mean, you saw it historically. They were very heavy spear players, and we saw almost no spear players on My.Games because you would see it. Because I watched a few streams, I watched their tournament stuff historically. I've obviously played in the Asian tournament as well, not the most recent one, but the one before. And they are just very heavy. Obviously, Pike now that came out, but very heavy spear players because if you get two spear players jump on a short sword, you're going to instantly kill him anyway. And then, like you said, that guy's out of the fight, so now they have the hero advantage. So they've always had that more aggressive playstyle like that. And there are some players on My.Games that try and play like that. But because the meta is so different here, because it is very heavy front line, very heavy melee setups, the light armors just struggle into that with their heroes. And if your hero doesn't get picked off, then what are light armor's going to do into that very heavy melee setup?
Yeah, but I don't think it's just light armor. I've been seeing a little bit of via muskets, a lack of like less medium armor than I've used to see. Like I used to see medium armor glaives. Now glaives have gone towards heavy again, or just because it's now obviously heavy meta. And I definitely see less pikes about and less spears and all that. And I just feel like, the armors are.
I think I can agree with you early in the season. But I think now the meta's changing again because I'm seeing, whilst Maul is still strong, I'm seeing a lot more people swapping over to the poleaxe. So I've seen a lot more dual blades because I don't know about yourself, but the shuriken dual blade has become a real big thing this season. Has been very, very strong especially.
It's the only thing that's keeping dual blades alive. And actually, on the dual blade point, I think a lot of dual blades are very much pining to head back to doing. I mean, it won't happen again because ambush has been nerfed too much. But to be able to jump off mount, ambush into a vapors, ambush into an infiltrator, ambush. Back in the day, it used to be like you used to trigger 3 abilities and your ambush would hit. But my kick now hits higher than my ambush. So because it's been nerfed so badly, like I'll hit on a heavy armor maybe 2,100, 2,600 with an ambush in the back. That is, and it's on a 3-second cooldown, so I can't even combo stealths into it. So I'm literally reclined to just throwing.
Yeah, now it's throw a shuriken, maybe an ambush, throw a shuriken, back off, throw a shuriken, then do your combo.
If you go, it's kind of feels so weird that I can have to like actually skill based and try and get involved and like try and get a back ambush on someone and it will hit them for 2,000. Yeah, I can go full agility and throw my daggers at a single person on a 3.5 second cooldown, and I can do 9,000 damage in one throw. So it just doesn't feel right to me that the difference in skill. I like it. Don't get me wrong. I like being able to throw my shurikens into multiple units, and it does lots of AoE. I've
actually swapped the dual blade recently as well because it's just fun. It's different, you know.
Yeah, the AoE is great. It's really really good. But I can see how it would start annoying other players, and it's not the easiest thing to sort of counter, especially when you got.
Yeah, I think part of that is because they brought out the chain dart, right? So I think they were trying to move dual blade away from being that soldier's hero killing assassin to push the chain dart more. That's what it feels like from my perspective anyway, because they brought this chain dart which has the choke, has the heavy CC, has all this stuff. It's all this new spangled new class that they kind of wanted to push dual blade away from that to push more of those players onto chain dart to try it out more. That's what it felt like from me.
But on this note, I this is why I'm going to bring up this little thing. I like it because it's a variation of a gameplay, but I'd like to have the other one. I think classes should have multiple different ways. Like, for example, I use this musket has the best variation of gameplay. You can go super aggressive musket, or you can go sort of the helpful musket where you're stopping cav charges, burning up units, throwing grenades. So the grenade musket, they have like two different play styles. So, and our shuriken playstyle goes off of runes, of course. It's like the only way you can play it is because of these runes.
Yeah.
So I'd love for them to do a thing where there are set runes every season, so you know if they release a bad rune, still got that one. I'm still okay. Like I can still go the shuriken spec because those are permanent runes. Like not on my abilities, just a permanent rune that comes out every season. Everybody has their kind of standard runes, and then they bring out
it's like a locked
experimental.
Rune.
Yeah,
it's like a locked rune. Because that's the thing, right? If the shuriken runes weren't there this season,
removing them,
unusable.
You wouldn't be able to do anything. You'd be the worst class in the game. There wouldn't be the only thing you'd have is sort of mark for death and maybe throw some jabs at them, and that would be your kind of gameplay.
Back to the good old season 2 and 3 dual blade where you just ulti jab.
I still do that all the time. It's my favorite thing to do. The best thing is to bait them in. I used to do it
with poleaxe and jabs.
Yeah, I tried that. I did try that.
It was one of my favorite moments in this game was back in it must have been like season 1 or 2 or really early on, and I would always bait people with poleaxe, with jabs, and so I would be really aggressive. I would see a group of 2 or 3 heroes, I would ult one of them so the other 2 would jump on top, I'd throw and I'd kill all 3. One time I killed 4 heroes with 1 jab throw, and it was one of the best moments I've had in this game. I was crying in the corner laughing from killing these people.
Back in the day when Imperial jabs had 2 throws.
Yeah. The
Loved
good old days.
Yeah, good old days.
Let's rein everything back towards kind of a new player experience there, because we strayed towards balance, and the experience that new players will find when they pick up a weapon, they've dedicated too much into it and found, maybe I want to go and swap onto something else, and they then have to grind their way up through the skill experience, skill points, just to unlock a tier 3 ultimate. Other games, such as New World recently did it, Tarkov does it regularly, which is where they just wipe the server and say, right, you're going to start again. If this happened to CB, not saying it will and not saying it should, this is like you are brand new, you're essentially getting a level 1 account. You've done it, I guess, but you're trying to get to top tier gameplay as quickly as possible. What do each of you take? What's your first weapon? What's the first units you unlock? What season challenges do you target? And do you go for a house or do you go for cohort?
If I go first on this one, it would probably still be dual blades to me because it seems to be the only thing I play at any sort of good level. And my first unit would probably be halberdiers, just because versatility. They do everything, keep me safe from cav, and decent just at sort of midline with the infantry, just picking up extra little kills. So. And then in terms of going to house, I definitely would. It's the people you meet through houses are unique, and it always gives you people to play with during the week, siege wise. So 100%.
Just to add on to that, would you make your own house or would you look to join an already formed house?
Let's join a house. The effort that goes into house, I have been literally speaking to our leaders. It's like, this is a second job for you, isn't it?
It's 100%. 100%. It's ridiculous. I was telling stories in the last podcast about it. Like back in pre-season, there 2 big coalitions were fighting, and there was like 30 houses on both sides, and we would have Diplo calls that would last 6 or 7 hours almost every day before the war to get this, to organize everything. And it was literally like we'd say in English, then it get translated to French, then German, then Spanish, then back again. Then we'd have to respond to that and go back and forth. It was horrendous.
Yeah, I don't envy them at all. I don't envy them.
I think myself. So if it got wiped, right, I think weapon wise, to be honest, probably poleaxe. Because I think I'm always a heavy armor player, but when you're playing early in the game, you need a class that can kill units to be able to farm the AI and stuff like that when you're first leveling up and to get these quests done. Because obviously I'm a longsword main, but it's just that is a nightmare to level as a longsword. Like you don't want to do it. I've done it before with Nodachi and leveled up with that, or with Glaive, which is quite good early on as well. But I think I'd probably go poleaxe because it's a class that you can level up fairly easily. You can kill a lot of stuff with it, and just the CC and things that it gives you, and the ultimate as well. Obviously, it's still useful for territories and things as well. I think unit-wise, probably Imp Shields, because where they are right now in the meta is actually pretty decent, and with the buffs they've had now as well, could work, and it also works really well with poleaxe. Season challenge-wise, I mean, it's a tough one because there's so many seasons, but there's not really one season that gives you amazing, like 2 sets of amazing units. Kind of like you want one unit from there, you want a blue from here. So you want like Cadian Militia as a blue, or Namkins, or then you want tier 4, you want 40s or camels, and then tier 5 you've got like or monks I should say, and then tier 5 you've got like so many different units, all the specialist units. You've got the Falcos, you've got the Flames, you've got the new Cav. I mean, I'd be torn. I'd probably either last season or this season. Last season for the camels, or this season for the monks and the Yang Yudo Cav, because they're so strong right now.
Probably do the 40s if I went down for the things. I think I'd go down.
Another good choice. Yeah.
I don't know what season. I can't remember what season that's. 5, isn't it? Is that 5?
It was 5 with the Flames, wasn't it? The 40s came out, or was it the season? No,
it might have been the season before
3.
actually. 3.
It was
season 3. Yeah, it was the Maul season when Maul came out.
Were they the same season as Falcos? Was that the same?
Yeah, yes, they are. Yeah, with the Quarterly Guards, whatever they are. They're the sort of
Condottieri.
That's one. Yeah, I'd probably go down that season, to be honest. Just for the 40s. I think 40s have some of the highest value in the game in terms of all play.
Oh yeah, so it was actually, that was back when they did 4 units in the season as well, wasn't it? Because that was Condottieri, 40s, Falcos, and Pavis. Because that was when they had 4 sets.
I wasn't in that season. So did they put the Pavis? Were they already in the unit tree before then, or did they put them in there afterwards? Because they are in the unit tree now.
They went straight into the unit tree.
It was it was both, wasn't it? Because you could unlock it either through.
But I imagine 25,000 honor was 25,000 honor wasn't easy to get back then.
I mean, at that point, I think I had it, so I just instantly unlocked them.
Yeah, I think that was the first season I played full. It was it was a sprint to get there.
Yeah, because I've been playing since beta, so I think I had stacked up honor at that point, so I think I just unlocked them straight away. But yeah, that was because there was a lot of stuff to unlock that season, wasn't it? Because I'm just looking at it now. We had the Condottieri, then the 40s, then the Falcos, then the Pavis, then you had the Maul, then you had the 2 Maul like stages as well.
Would you like to see it go back to that? It just in terms of, because obviously that's a lot of content. I never experienced to that amount of content because I came in at the end of the Legacy of Fire, so I didn't.
You can look at the season before that as well. The season before that was even more because it was Namkins, Salemkids, Korkins, Seregs, Kevtools, and Keshiks. That was 6 units.
That's the content there is incredible. But obviously my only season I did fully when I started was Scourge of Winter.
Yeah, and that was only 3 then, wasn't it? Although that was when they had, wasn't that the upgraded versions of them then? Was that when they did that?
It was just the upgraded versions. So yeah, it was I never got to experience the 4 units or the even 6 units, so that must have been
it was a grind for
the
Keshig one. That was a big grind.
That's what we're all
but
after.
Then it was basically 3 after that. The only other one that was 4, looking at it now, was Dynasty, but that's only because you had the pike weapon. It wasn't an actual 4 units. It's been 3 ever since then, or even 2, because Helheim was only 2, wasn't it? With the
Scorpio, obviously, with the weapon as well. That was.
Yeah, good shout. Yeah, Scorpio with the weapon as well. But yeah, I would probably go for Scorpio as the season I go for first, probably. Just because camels are so strong.
Love camels so much.
Really, really, really strong.
Can we put more of those units in? I think we really should have more things that just look different. Not horses, like camels are great. How about elephants?
That's a sore topic. We can't do.
So controversial, isn't it?
That was the one regret I have with this game is when I first started, I was unemployed, so I never got the pre-order pack. That's the one regret I have, is not getting that elephant pre-order pack. Because when they then decided to change that and they gave everyone like 80,000 sovereigns or something like that, I think it was.
God, I can
and
do
an
a lot with
elephant
that.
mask, and I don't know if this is true or not, but the rumors are that content creators at the time got that pack as well.
Oh, I wish we
This is
got that now.
This is a real tangent. Do you remember in Rome Total War, there were those elephants that were bigger than the city gates, and you could randomly get them spawned as mercenary units? And they were unable to leave the city if they spawned as
Yes, I
defenders.
do. Yeah, having
And
to knock walls down to let them out.
essentially, and that is the mechanic that CB had to try and go through. It's like, how do we get these elephants
But
through
think about
tiny
it.
gates?
So just random, just something to add. Like, think about elephants that can break walls on maps.
That would be
So,
that would be
so you
breaches.
we
don't have
should
set
definitely
breaches, but you can
talk.
break like anything.
Should we get through
Definitely
your
talk about
part,
fun mechanics? Yeah, let's just get through this final part.
and then we'll get on back on this?
Yeah, I think then we could do like a free discussion afterwards.
So yeah, we haven't heard Drayton's opinion on what you do.
Yes.
Oh, well, actually, sorry, I need to add
That's
the house
what we're
bit,
getting to.
don't I? So, I think I would have to join a house or make my own house because I have done it so many times. And it is a lot of work, but it is good fun as well. Because cohorts, for me, cohort is a really nice idea, but in practice, it's just so unorganized that I feel it's not worth going into it. I've
Just
never
like doing a
been in it
normal
myself,
siege.
so I can't say. But from my understanding, it's just hundreds of players. Most of them are inactive. People don't listen. They're not organized. They just do whatever they want, which is kind of the point of cohorts. But at the same time, it means you can't really do anything because I mean you've all seen it when cohorts attack your city or your village you're in. They're just an unorganized mass. Half of them sit AFK just trying to farm units because they don't need to take the objective. They just farm the AI that comes out through the gate, and that's how they get their points. So for me, it'd be joining a house or making one.
Yeah.
Before I continue this, I'd like to make a point that we really would like to speak to someone who has done cohorts for a long period of time, has been in there and experienced it, because there are some legendary stories of cohorts defending capitals in both European servers and American servers. If you're one of those people and you're listening to this, please just reach out. We'd love to talk to you, because we don't have enough representation of what an organized cohort experience is like. So then bring it back. Personally, I think one of the weapons that if you're going to dedicate a lot of time to, I would go for pike. I think the difference between a pike that has just picked up the weapon versus the ones who have mastered it.
But at the same time, we're talking about a server wipe, right? It's going to take you a while to unlock that. So it's worth trying to aim for that.
Some people will pay. Some people can pay for that.
You are so right.
But if we drop some names, we think of like Madchin, we think of Dan. Wolf Silent has picked it up and he's phenomenal now. These are players that if I see there and I'm a maul, I just go, I'm not even going to bother going near you. You're going to beat me. And that's as a maul player where in 1v1 you're pretty strong. I think Pike has got the highest skill ceiling in the game right now.
Totally agree.
I've never even tried it because I just can't be bothered to put in the effort to learn it, basically, because I know how difficult it's going to be.
Easy to play, hard to master.
It's easy to be somewhat effective.
Oh yeah. Easy, you can play it, but you're going to be just hitting units and doing it. You're going to lose a lot of fights.
I think new players will go backflip.
Yeah, exactly. they don't combo. They'll go all three strikes, all three backflips, all three hit downs, or whatever it is. Where, as I said, easy to play, hard to master. Once you master it, it is single-handedly the best weapon in the game. If you can master it, you will not be beaten if you get it down to a T.
Mm-hmm. I think unit-wise, I don't think you can go wrong with a good shield unit. Whether or not that's the stalwarts, obviously upgraded spear sergeants, because spear sergeants are your go-to for new players, or it used to be. They'd enable you to do your expeditions, they'd enable you to do your bandit raids, and then you upgrade them into stalwarts, and you're then able to be effective pretty much in any fighting situation. I think that's where I'd recommend players to go, or I would try and aim myself, because I think it's relatively quick to get there. And also the units you get in that season are also quite good. I think that's also your coconuts and maybe even armigers in that season, so it's quite a good one to try and touch up on. Have to be a house. If you want to achieve anything quickly in this game, a house is the way to do it. A coordinated effort is always going to be quicker. I think that sums it up for me.
Yeah, that's
any other points that got raised in your minds from that before we go into a free discussion of things that we'd love to see and can potentially add?
It's off topic, but it got raised in my mind that obviously you're talking about the spear sergeants turning them into stalwarts and then being effective. Do you think there's a point in this game where it's time to move some of these from seasonal challenges and just move them into putting them next to in the honor system. So like having the stalwarts onwards from the spear sergeants, because we're getting into, there's going to be a point in time where we have 20 seasons, and to go around unlocking everything, I know there's a monetary gain in some of it, but is there not a point to maybe start moving some units from there? You still can unlock them if you want to, but you can also get them with honor.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's something we touched on in the last episode, and I think it's a good point to raise again, is like, it is such a graph for new players coming in, and even at the moment, seeing 14 or 15 stages of units they've got to unlock one by one that they cannot unlock multiple times. So some ideas you've had floating around are being able to unlock more than one season at the same time.
Yes, that would be a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, moving to honor tree, but they put themselves into a corner really, because they had the honor system and then they brought in the seasonal challenges, and they're completely separate. So it's so difficult to get them together. Should they just move everything to honor tree? Should they move everything to the seasonal challenges kind of way? Like, it's difficult to have both there because they're kind of counterintuitive to each other. Should they just get rid of the honor system altogether and just have them as you start the game, when you hit a certain level, you unlock these units for free? Is there another way they can do it rather than that? Because it's kind of redundant having two separate systems to unlock units. It's not really the most user-friendly way of looking at it.
I think a good way of going about it would be like, because obviously now we're on season 15, aren't we? So I think you could take the 5 oldest seasons and then start moving their units over to the honor tree, and then so you've always got 10 seasons to unlock, and then every time you just move those units.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting way of looking at it. I never thought of that before, because obviously we've got like the chivalric tree that they added in, we've got the rattan tree they added in, so they could add in just each season as a tree on the honor system.
It would make,
that could be a good way of doing it.
For new players, it would make it so much more friendly.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be, it could be one. It could be one. You could go, okay, now we're on season 15, we're going to take season 1 or season 2, I think they started on season 2, and we're going to put them all in the unit tree. And then the next season comes out, they go, okay, season 3 is now going in there, like they're doing with the antique weapons, like how they're, we're getting all those in different seasons,
I think Evo mentioned it, that realistically, the way that My.Games finances itself using Conquerors Blade is the unlocking of seasonal challenges.
Yeah, 100%.
So I don't know how easy it would be for them to let go of that. Particularly,
but that's what, even if you said it's just the oldest season, right? Just have one season go in there.
Yeah,
could be a way of getting new players into it. But another thing we looked at is as well, probably another way we looked at it was introduce a new weekly challenge where you have to play a certain number of games, and it gives you a token to buy off one stage of one of the challenges.
Yeah, it gives you something to work towards.
Yeah, firstly, it will give you an easy way of unlocking units, but also it incentivizes players to play the game more.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's what the game needs. The game needs people to not log in and sign in for the sign-in bonus, but to log in and play 5 sieges and complete that daily quest. Personally, I think weekly quests are a better way of doing it, to have a longer and not punish the people that can only play a few days a week, but give players that...
Yeah, that's why a weekly one is good, because then you can do it on the weekends kind of thing. I mean, I know at one point I was literally just logging into the game, doing 5 AI games to get my daily challenges done and logging off again. I went through that. This was like season 5 or 6 when I was... It may have been a bit later than that, but I was losing the interest in the game and had a lot of stuff going on in my personal life. I would just log in, do 5 AI games, log off, go and do some other stuff. And that's what I was doing, because there was no incentive to play more than that, because at that point you didn't have all these extra challenges and things to do.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking about AI games, that is the best way to get skill points now as well.
By far, yeah.
It's not right, I don't think.
Look at the difference now with skill points as well. You used to have to farm death matches to get skill pages to get your ultimates. And now how much easier it is now, and how much more user-friendly it is now to level things up.
That feels so long ago.
Mm-hmm.
Farming the pages, god damn.
And it was so expensive. I think it was like, wasn't it 30 pages for the first level, 45 for the second, and 60 for the third, or something like that?
35 for the last one, yeah.
It was stupid.
It was... That was a grind that I'd forgotten about. I haven't even got into like weapon tree, because the unit tree's changed a decent amount. It's a lot quicker to get to that higher tier golden unit, but the unit tree units don't tend to be used compared to seasonal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one thing I would say though at the moment is like a couple of the changes done recently. They've been trying to get those units to be useful. The likes of the halberd sergeants we mentioned quite a lot already. Yeah. The likes of the imp shields that we spoke about. It's also with, I mean, remember the palace guards? They were unused for so long, then they buffed them, and like for a good season or two, they were a really good unit. Now they're kind of fallen off again. Yeah. But
it used to be a joke, guys. I've brought the most effective unit possible, and you'd see someone bringing palace guards. You're like, oh my no, please, anything but that. But there are like. There's definitely unitary units that are usable. The tertios are they're very specialist for a reason, and they're picked for a reason, which I think is a common theme along the gold units, which is they're specialized into a certain niche, and as long as they are the best at it, they will be picked. There's units like Varangian Guards, which are not the best at anything, and you just don't see them.
Yeah, but when they were strong, they were broken.
They were the
But
best.
that's also the running theme as well, is like when these seasonal units come out, they're normally broken. And is that because they want people to pay for them? Because they're a broken unit.
Yeah, and I think that puts a bit of salt in people's mouths, to be honest, when they, when a new unit comes out, and it kind of, I think a lot of people think down that route, and it could have put a bad taste in their mouth.
Which may or may not be the case. It might also just be the difference in meta again, because I don't know if monks are as strong on booming. Because again, over here, when monks came out, obviously we're in the tier 4 lock. Everyone's playing shields and melee units that monks are really strong into.
I think the one thing I'd put a case against that would be the French season, the Banner Guard. I know they're good if used properly, but they were
such a new unit. Because nobody knew how to use them effectively.
Yeah,
and when you use them right, we've seen it even. So when I was playing the Asian CBL, some of the teams there were using it on their defenses because they would have blue pikes that would charge down the tower, instantly reset with a banner guard, charge again straight away.
Fantastic.
And so you can have set, or even with Reapers, charge instantly, banner guard, Reaper charge again. So they can be so useful. But again, they were such a new unit, no one had no idea how to play them. You'd see people really wandering around with a flag in their hand, just going, "What the hell am I doing with this?" Just wandering back and forwards. And it's like, actually, when you play it well, it's really strong in the right
When
hands.
those came out, I think everyone was very used to, as you said, the Palace Guards were good at the time, and everyone was used to charge, press button, wait a few seconds, press button again. And when you get to Banner Guard, it's like, okay, so I'm going to put them in this formation, going to grab the banner, going to click Indomitable, going to charge you. While you're charging, going to reset the charge, then I'm going to charge you again, and then I'm going to charge myself that's going to charge you again, and then we got to get you out and get you back to the thing.
Yeah, and it's like, it's a good point as well. Is like the units are getting more and more complicated as well. The ones bring out. If you look at, say, compare it to, for example, the 40 season, you had 40s, you pushed brace. You had condottieri, you press 2, or you have charge. You had the Falcos, where you press 1 button to aim them, and then that's it. You had the Pavis, where you had 2 buttons, sometimes 3 if you had the extra doctrines on. But compare that now to like the Varangians, where you had to press the same button 3 or 4 times.
Just do this. You just spam your finger.
Yeah. Well, it was the old joke, wasn't it? We had the press 2 mechanics. Keshik, you press 2. Tertios, you press 2. That was an old joke running in the community. Whereas now the units are a lot. Some of them are a lot more different to that. The likes of Shieldmains, when they came out, you'd put them into the pike formation, you get the defensive buff, then you swap to sword, then you charge, then you do this, then you do that, and all these combos you had to do with a unit. Even monks to a certain regard, because whilst you're pressing the same button over and over again, you have to constantly be aware of them when their 2 is finished, pressing again, pressing 1, comboing into it, using that to counter seize it, all that kind of stuff. So it's a lot more interactive now, whereas previously I would say, especially early on in the game, you kind of let your unit do its thing.
I do like it. I do like when the units have some stuff to do, but this is just a personal point, and a lot of people won't not agree with me on this. Because obviously I play dual blades, that means I'm very squishy. The time it takes to do a lot of these things is the time it takes for me to get completely one shot.
So why do you think I enjoy playing imp shields and longsword? I just sit there pushing heal over and over again.
I get very jealous of those long swords that just put their shield up and then can just play around with their unit while they're nice and safe.
I wouldn't even get me started on your key setup, Plumsion. I've seen you've got stuff on F10 and
massive hands.
So that was I think you're completely right with that. And where the units are going and they have the potential to go is really, really cool. And I'd love to see more of the unitary units get a bit of love. The Palace Guard update was a huge one that did completely change the way they were played.
Yeah.
There's been a decent number of changes also that players are not giving a go. Like the Tsurgs from season 2 are quite niche, but they've got some power. The Banner Guards, as well as the Bagpipers. If you speak to my guys in my tournament teams, they know I talk about them a lot because I do think they're massively underutilized.
Same with the healers,
in a coordinated play, 1 second of CC immunity could be in the difference between your Madao getting run over by a monastic versus them just killing a monastic outright. It it could be massively influential, as well as you time it with a Shenji throw and you do the damage buff. They go from dealing 1,000 damage with every bomb to 3,000 damage with every bomb. That's not just a unit reduced to red. That's wiped and never coming back out.
Yeah,
which is a huge difference in competitive play. So I've got a huge advocate for these niche, very specialized units, and I think they have a place in the game. But it's so difficult to play in regular sieges without good teammates, without coordinated gameplay. So I really want new units like that, but I recognize that they're not going to be received as well as a unit that is press 2 kill 100 units.
I totally agree. I think, healers and bagpipes, I think, were some of the coolest units put in the game. I honestly love the synergy that bagpipes also remove the sleepy mode from claymores. That I think a lot of people don't know because they have no idea that it will literally take your claymores from being one shot to being back to able to do things again just by pressing one button and just synergizing with someone. So yeah, I think I would love to see more units like that. I'd love to see
what sort of unit would you put in?
Oh god, so this is a controversial one, but obviously we've had Falconettis, and I think that's one of the most unique units in the game. I think it's awesome. I'd love to see a version of that, but like obviously less range and like almost small ballista setups, like maybe a unit of 4 or 5 that set up hallway ballistas, if that makes any sense. So they've just got these mini ballistas, and you set them up, and they almost do what Falcos do in a way, but just down a straight line. I think would be quite cool having something like that. Having a unit that builds artillery and does maybe 3 different vectorency lines. One takes you down a ballista, one takes you down this, one takes you down this, and it doesn't have any fighting capability apart from putting down artillery that then it sits on and uses.
I feel like a unit like that would have to be legendary though, because of how.
Oh yeah. It would have to be legendary. No, that would absolutely have to be legendary. I would also love to see that longbow spot just get filled.
One that's we mentioned that last episode as well. Like, when are we gonna get those tier 5 longbows?
It's got to be some sort of like Robin Hood or something. Just a one man archer
AI.
just there, just aims and just
it's just an AI hero, just loads in and just fights alongside you.
Just Chuck Norris with a ballista. Would be
but that could be an interesting point. Like it could be like a ballista hero or something instead. Yeah, like a ballista unit. It could be an interesting take. I mean, that would be quite contested in the community because there's a lot of people that don't like siege. But imagine if it could only like pierce like 2 units or something, so each shot could kill 2 units, something like that. But it just adds that function there. That's
do
not
nothing
really
more
in the game.
do nothing more than Falcos. I mean, if you could essentially doing exactly the same as Falcos do. You set them up there, and they would do exactly the same as these ballistas would do. Except these ballistas, you would give them a niche thing that they do differently to Falcos. So I don't see a problem with it. But I'd love to see those sort of unique units that can't actually fight like Falcos can't. But they've got a base use. You know, Falcos, you put them in a game and you play them well, you can totally change. You can have the enemy team can have the best setup in the world. They've got Imperial Spears set up. They've got Fort Brachios through them. They've got literally the nicest setup ever. One person brings Falco and they all scatter.
It's similar to Flames as well, but obviously with a different function, but very similar, just game-changing. If you play them well, they can absolutely destroy a setup and destroy a game, but if you don't play them well, they're very easy to punish.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, just go around and
I think one unit I'd like to see is like a resupply unit that can like resupply range units.
Yeah.
That's something I would like to see, because that would be very game-changing as well, because then you can get these Falcos in these spots that you can't really deal with very easily, but can also still be resupplied. Or you've got the frontline flames that can be resupplied as well.
Would you say your resuppliers would have to go resupply themselves, so they would be the runner back and forward, or what?
I would say so. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
I think they should have They should have like an initial stack that they can maybe resupply once or resupply twice or something, but then they'd have to run back to the resupply to grab more resources to come back. But even if it's a cavalry unit, have a fast moving unit that has no capability in the fighting zone but can resupply the units. Because I think if you made it a cav unit, it would be better probably, because then it can't go up on walls.
Yeah, that is true.
Because I think if you could have it going up on walls, you could get people putting Falcos in ridiculous spots that you can't counter with Trebs either, that then you could instantly resupply. I think it would need to be some kind of mounted unit that can't go on the wall.
I really like that. I would probably still make the men, but I'd make them really fast when they go to pick up the stuff. But when they pick it up, they are slow getting back to you. Yeah, they are carrying stuff. Like, they're going to be sort of Iron Reaper, half Iron Reaper speed on the way.
Yeah, really slow. Maybe they're even dragging something behind them.
Yeah,
right?
just
slows them down.
like a cart or something. Maybe they're pulling a cart on their back.
Yeah, a cart would be interesting because then they wouldn't be able to go up the stairs, would they? So that would be an interesting way of dealing with that as well. Because then you can't get them in those really awkward spots. So yeah, a little guy that's pushing a little like wheelbarrow in front of him.
That would be great.
Like,
I think that'd be so cool.
Running along.
As a blue unit, as a first unit, similar to how the bagpipes and the healers were, it would add in for those three. Well, it would make a good trio in terms of, a just completely sort of unit that just does something cool for the team that can't do anything else.
Yeah.
I really like that idea, and I'm going to build upon it because we saw with the recent map changes on White Elk Fort and Curragh Castle, there are a number of blockades that are on the map to start with and can be destroyed, and essentially there's what Battlefield called levolution. The level changes as you play through it and you progress your way through. I would love a supply unit to be able to deploy breakable barriers. And essentially, if you deploy it in front of a cav charge and the cavalry run into this barrier, they stop.
Jason, you know what's going to happen, right?
Oh yeah, it's going to be. Have you ever played
15 stack walls going up
on the front gate on cooldown?
There'll be new castles erected. It would be.
Honestly, I thought you were going to say it. As soon as you started talking, I was like, I know where he's going with this. I think that would genuinely be such a good idea.
Imagine like Rainbow Six Siege. You could do a custom game mode where you have one unit of this, and you have to like funnel the AI in a tower defense like game.
Yeah, well, they've already got tower defense in. Yeah, so you could make your own tower defense by having to build these things up. And that's one thing that I didn't mention last week when we talked about all these new events. The tower defense modes I really enjoyed because they're not easy. Once you know what you're doing, you can do them. But the one that's regular deploy and defend is fine. Everyone can do that. But the special one they brought in, that was so hard to actually finish that level. Some people got it straight away. I took so long trying to do that. People were like, if you stand on this flag, they'll all aggro to you. So you can easily get loads of points. If you build this here, you'll easily win. And I was like, I built that. I still can't win. So I really enjoy these modes are hard. And so many people cried about it, saying it's too difficult. But once you learned it and you played it enough and got good at it, you could win it and win it easily.
Such a good way for them to go with PvE. Such a good way for them to go with PvE. Like really, really. Like,
didn't they tease it before something like that though? Because weren't they talking about open world being able to build more stuff or something? That there was something they mentioned in a dev release or something, and then it never actually happened. It was something about building stuff in the open world.
We'll talk about the open world next because Plumsion, you really wanted to talk about that.
Yeah.
But let's just, if we wrap up like things we'd like to see, I'd love to see a unit that specializes in scaling walls, so can essentially prop up or create its own ladder. Whether or not that's similar to like an assassin unit with a grapple hook, and the entire unit climbs as one rather than drip feeding up a ladder being killed. I think that would be really cool. But I just want to bring up the barricade idea again. Can you imagine for the first 2 minutes of a territory war fight, all these people bringing out this unit?
you go, quick, they're climbing, quick, stop.
Like it would be changing the game. The game would change instantly from just that introduction of a unit, and that's what we'd love to see because it means it's so fresh season on season. And there's a really nice way, if you do look through the way they've released seasonal units, the current season unit tends to counter previous season or the season before or one or two before.
Yeah.
So there is a natural.
Or it counters the meta. So yeah,
it's a natural way of kind of like sweeping through and changing the game. I think that would be really, really fun. Hi everyone that's still listening. While we were recording this, Plumsion's internet dropped out, so I'm just going to take a moment to add in what I think should be a good section where we just do a couple of announcements and address a few things from the previous video. First of all, thank you so much for the response. Overwhelmingly positive, and we really appreciate that. Please keep giving feedback, keep giving ways for this to improve. We want this to be the best thing it can, but we also want it to be the content that you guys are after as well. And the first things I want to address are whether or not we as the podcast can talk about specific topics and whether or not it'd be a great idea to talk about something in particular. I think it makes a lot of sense for us to announce what our schedule is. We're going to try and release these every Tuesday. The first episode was on the veteran experience. The second episode we are listening to now is on the new player one. Our next episodes are going to be on balance, and for that we've got Armour in to talk. And the following one is going to be on the territory war experience. For that we've got Ghost X. We're just confirming who the next people will be, so hopefully we're going to have an in-depth conversation about the numbers behind CB, whether or not that hidden features that regular players won't know about, or general advice that we could be giving to new players based on what the numbers are telling us. And then some of the more community-driven activities, looking particularly at tournaments. So we're going to have CB in to talk about his CBR tournament. And then following that, we'll go on to the casting experience. So the way in which the competitive game is observed by viewers, as well as the people that are doing the casting. And all of this is to try and gather some interesting feedback, interesting ideas for then our final episode of the first season, which will be talking to the community managers. And that's kind of the 8-episode start we want for season 1, and that should lead us very nicely into the start of the next season in game. Another comment we've had is that the conversations do seem to flip between a lot of topics, and that is completely intentional. We want this to be a fluid discussion. If something is interesting, let's talk about it. And as we address each point going through the episode, we do have a number of key topics we'd like to then bring it back to. And we do try to. We're noticing that the episodes are quite long and are only getting longer. The one with Amir is realistically going to be split into 2 parts because one of the conversations was so in depth about such a niche area, it's probably its own podcast on its own. But as we said, please give us feedback. We're very happy to talk, as well as any suggestions, any ideas, just throw them at us. And as a bit of a thank you for everyone listening, we're going to do a small giveaway as a appreciation to you guys, and that will be, we'll do it as a draw in the comment section of the YouTube video. If you're listening on Spotify, just hop over to the YouTube video and we'll go from there. If you want to be entered into the giveaway, I think let's say you like, subscribe, and then leave a comment on what you think the biggest changes for new players would be. We want new players to be attracted to the game and then to stay in the game. And what suggestions do you guys have for the best way to make that happen? And we'll do the draw for this after about a week, and we'll dive straight back into Plumsion now. Okay, Plumsion, fire away on the open world stuff.
Yeah, so in terms of open world, I love the way it works in terms of bringing your men with you, getting your serves all set up. I have a set of level 7 serves that are all ready to gather as much resources as possible. My main gripe with the system is that it's just unobtainable in terms of some of the bronze prices and when things are open in terms of the higher nodes. And I was going to suggest a bit of a different system to it in terms of, instead of using bronze, paying the houses that own them bronze, they take a percentage of the resources you do, so they can set the percentage to up to 50%. So then when you say, let's say I go and do some, I don't know, iron ore, they'll take 50% of the iron ore, and then that goes into a sort of a house bank that then they can take that ore and turn it into artillery or whatever they need to turn it into, instead of giving them the bronze, because then it would encourage newer players to go out and do some farming because they're not charged anything to do it. You know, it doesn't sound like much, but when someone's charging you 10,000 bronze a go, and when you're using requisition orders and everything, it's just, you're like, what is the point? I can't build unit kits for this price. I could just easily do it my bronze. You know, it's so much cheaper.
9 times out of 10, one person's already emptied it before you get there anyway.
Yeah,
and that's one thing I don't like. It's just like you'll have those sweaty people throughout the day that are logging in because they're working from home, Drayton, and they just sat there and they go, I'm going to empty this mine and no one else can get it. And that's where it's changed from where it used to be, right? Because it used to be that even when it was empty, you could still gather from it, but at heart, you get half the resources from it.
So here was
I think that's something we could do bring back.
This was my idea. So you would obviously have your house resources that they would take a percentage, but then as you're going in the world, you're looking with your serves, you're going about, and then a mine opens up randomly, and it's similar to going into one of the, when you get attacked by a bandit. So you go in and you put your physically your serves are going into a mine, and this would encourage you to have to bring a defensive unit as well, right? So you're going looking for these mines and these resources, and you would be protecting these guys. So they'd be going in and out, collecting resources in and out of this actual world mine, and then you would have like AI coming. You could even have it that enemy like sort of hostile other houses could come into this as well and start attacking you. So it would encourage you to bring maybe like 3 sets of serves and then 2 sets of thingy units, or 4 serves and 1 thingy. And
or even your house members could be outside intercepting people that come in to try and stop you, that kind of stuff. It had a lot of different
just think it'd be cool. you could have different levels of it in terms of like, okay, so a common resource, you would only have you might not have AI turn up. They might turn up. You're just watching a guy's mine, and that might go on for like 3 minutes or so. And then you have the harder resources that you've got that heroes can turn up to. There's hard AI, and you've actually got to be like, you're watching your servers, and then you actually got to protect them. That I think could be a really cool added system to.
I think it could be something to do it, but then it's how much. What would that cost people for players to enter it? How much would you get from that? Maybe it's a weekly cap of how many times you can do it.
Yeah, you could do
something like
cap.
that, because otherwise that could get out of hand very quickly. There'd be a lot of ways to abuse that system, I think.
Yeah, I just think the main point would be that I like after a few sieges to go out and do some farming, and I would like it to be a little bit less like, oh shit, what's the point of doing this? Because I can't. My unit kits are cheaper if I just do it through their warband thing through the barracks. And so unit kits, never going to make them. And then artillery, by the time I've finished farming it all, I've spent a ridiculous amount of bronze and then quite a bit of silver to craft it, when I can go to the auction house and basically just buy it for far less effort.
Building on your idea, I think giving the house those funds to use. One thing I've always wanted is a way to upgrade cities when you're holding them. So, because at the moment it's just the higher level it is, the better the AI are inside, right? That's just something that maybe not a lot of players will know about. But the defending AI gets stronger the higher level the city or the village is. I think an interesting way of doing it would be having things like, you can build an archery range, which will then spawn in archers or something like that. Or you can select, maybe you have a certain pool or a certain leadership, so to speak, where you can select what certain units you want to spawn in on there. Something like that would add
defend and deploy.
Yeah, but it would encourage people to actually hold cities and things as well, because a lot of people won't. They don't put much effort into leveling up cities until it's too late or it's the end of the season. This would encourage people to hold targets, level them up, and actually play more defensively. So then you won't have these alliances holding all this land, stretching out really thin, trying to hold it, because they'll actually need to focus on one or two smaller areas.
Yeah, imagine if you could deploy. Sorry, go ahead.
Thief Quest could be an amazing way of doing that, where you have there's specific requirements to hand in the thief quest, and then when we first started, that got you arguably the most honor you were going to get. If you own the town and you submitted a 400 honor quest, you got 600 honor for free. Yeah, you had to go and gather, but imagine if you had the town said, right, for this week I need 30,000 of a specific exotic, 20,000 of another, 1,000 from a region that's not the one that's currently here, and the players have to actively go and get it and bring it to the site for it then to be leveled or not even de-leveled. You then would actually have a worldwide experience of the game, because currently it's just, I stay in my region, I play territory war, and players, that's not very satisfying for the players that do like to go out and farm. You talk about the players that empty nodes when they first appear. I mean, I've set timers on my phone, and I've got alarms on there still that would say Old Sintar mine, because Old Sintar was the place in Maoyang to get the tungsten, and I would reset that every 4 hours just so that I'd be able to keep myself topped up.
I think maybe it just comes from my WoW days of where like you would just kind of decide, okay, I'm not going to be going out questing today, I'm going to go and mine some more, and you just kind of roam about, you'd come across it and you'd get it, and then you could sell it or make it into something else. And
but I feel like that's where it used to be like that, because you could mine from anything at any point. Like I said, even when it's empty, you could use a requisition token and still gather from it just at a reduced rate. Whereas now it's like, if it's empty, you can't do anything. And you'll know that experience yourself. You log in, you open the map. If you're playing in the evening, you open the map, everything's empty. Everything's always empty.
It's gone. And it's
as soon as it comes up, unless you're sat there waiting, as soon as it's up, it will be empty straight away, because someone will be sat there waiting for him.
Yeah, and it's not a good feeling. And I think it's also, the unit kit thing is like a totally wasted part of the game. I don't know. It should be actually financially better for me to, if I need to save some bronze, to go and make unit kits. But blue unit kits, to make them would cost you like 5 or 10 times the amount of bronze it would cost me just to do it in my barracks. Why has that not been
The only thing I would add on that is that unit kits is actually a good way of making silver. I know people each season that will craft lots of legendary unit kits and will sell them on the market to make a lot of silver. So I would say it can be a way of converting bronze to silver if you put in the time and effort for it. But
it's a
otherwise, like you
lot
said,
of
it is
time and a
useless.
lot of effort that
For
apart
me,
from,
that's
like,
what the open world should be. The open world should be a consistent way of turning your bronze into silver. You should be rewarded for playing sieges, and you should be rewarded and have a rewarding experience from going out in the open world. Because currently, it is just a bronze drain because you're spending a ton on gathering a little resource or only a few. Even then, you're rolling the dice each time. If you're trying to, there was a big period where purple horses were profitable and you would sell them at decent value.
Yeah, I remember going to
Now,
the Borderlands as soon as it
yeah,
opened and farming horse mines as much as you could.
and you could, but if you do that and you spend 10 requisition tokens, that's 100,000 bronze, and you realistically you might have got 2 of those being successful with horses to get the purple ones. If it was a blue, if it's a purple stable, you might have got 3 or 4.
but you'd be spending 15 to 30,000 on using that,
Yeah,
potentially.
and then if someone owns the land and you are a new player and you don't actually have the requisition tokens, you're looking at 50,000 bronze for one gather to not guarantee yourself something, and that does not feel satisfying
good
and not rewarding to do.
That's why I think the percentage thing would be so good, and it just goes into a house bank, and the house can still set their percentages, but they benefit from it. We go mine their ore for them, and then we get something out of it. They get 50% of it, goes in. They don't have to go farming. They can just go and make their artillery straight away.
I also love the idea of veteran players who have the millions of bronze to spend on that, trickling it down into the new players that don't, and giving essentially doing that. Look, it's almost like taxes. And the tax system in the game is very limited and very linear. And
well, I remember back in like beta, you would put the taxes to as high as possible on like the gathering, because people could gather at any point, so you would make so much money from that as a house.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas now it's just not really used, and people just don't even edit it, because no one really holds villages that have the resources anyway. People just go in for cities, so it's not really a feature that's used much in the game. There are the odd house that go around, like there's is it tax collectors or something in the Borderlands that they will go around and literally flip villages for silver,
and they will gank you in the open world and take your resources.
Again, maybe that's a population thing, because back in beta when there was the population there, or back in the early seasons, you would have a lot of people doing that. You had the likes of Zaltag and like Golden Company that were like mercenary houses that would just go and flip stuff for gold and would attack things and would gang people in the open world and all that kind of stuff. And you don't see that nowadays. And I think part of that is just down to population, because there's not the population there to have the number of players that are interested in doing that.
Yeah. Well, it's something for them to look at eventually, I hope.
I think the pursuit system has also changed an awful lot if we look at it. When it first started, you had 15 on 15 with Q in the open world potential, and they reduced that to 5 on 5. I remember, I think one of my fondest stories on EU2 was the Orgolia winter season. It was it was a tough season, but it was incredibly well contested, and Chimera, one of the shot callers for Ingegna, got ganked, and his fight remained up for the full half an hour, and at least 50 players on each side cycled in.
I mean, even on EU1, it was just massive, because obviously everyone had to go hand in these quests to rebuild these cities, and it was just interceptions everywhere. I can't remember, who was it? There was someone at the time, because this was when I'd made the Pock House with Jello and all the top players from where I was at the time, and I remember that, I think it may have been Tiglo. I can't remember. There was one player that we ganked so many times because we could see him try and do quests, and we had a bit of a reputation with backstory with him anyway, but he was in my friends list at the time, and I could see every time we went to intercept, instant offline 0.4. I go, oh, guys, he's back online again. He'll load in a second. Instantly ganked, instantly. Like, literally went about 10 times he did that, and then he went, fuck it, I'm out. And he just went offline for like 2 hours and was like, fuck you guys. Like, this, I can't deal with this.
Yeah, on the open world stuff, we used to set up. You were saying like you kind of arranged that everyone would deliver Thief Quest at the same time. We would set up like special calls to say we are going to Steinclip. Do not touch it. Like form up and everyone go at exactly the same time, because you were having to hand in resources that were worth like 100,000 silver in your wagon.
Not easy to come by. I mean, I remember doing it for the
Alliance. So interesting. Such a different world.
It's like I used to, when I first started, I farmed a lot of the rebels because I used to have fun doing that with friends. We go into the rebel camps, we farm that. So I had a lot of rebel stuff stacked up. So I was fine with those quests, but a lot of people in the house or alliance weren't, because they hadn't played that long or they hadn't farmed it much. So I remember, because I think at that point I was unemployed, I sat there for like a week straight, literally just fighting rebels non-stop for about 5 or 6 hours each day, just literally throughout the day, just fighting non-stop, farming them, and then selling them for the alliance and for the house to then buy and donate. And that's how seriously a lot of people took it, because you had to finish these quests, you had to get it first, because Western cities were so hard to take off people.
Yep.
So it was so much fun organizing all this stuff. It was definitely the snow and the move speed, which is horrendous.
I've still got some winter ale in my.
I've got loads of wine and ale still in my
Yeah,
inventory.
still
I think
got
I've
my
got a stack
winter
of 99 of both, I think. Just in case they bring it back.
Already there. I love that. I like that season. That season was great. Do you guys remember the boss they put in?
Yeah.
That was a really interesting mode. Because again, it wasn't the easiest. Some people did lose it as well, but it was fun. It was different, and that's where I think they are heading in the right direction with a lot of these events. Is they are different. They're not easy, and it's engaging. It makes you want to play the game. Sometimes when it's a daily one, sometimes it's a bit of a grind. But like if it's like a weekly event kind of thing, it's like it's good. Because I don't know about you guys, deploy and defend. I don't play that every day, and I probably should because I'm getting free things from it. But I don't play that twice a day.
I try to do it every day, but I definitely miss it.
I did to start with, but I haven't played it for a couple of weeks now.
I normally start my stream with it because it's quite a chilled way to start my stream. It just sort of get out the go. While people are coming in, I just sort of defend and employing. So yeah, I like it though. In terms of sorry, go for it.
If you've got a point on that, go for it. Otherwise,
no, it's fine.
Let's move on to some things that we really think the game needs and the game should continue to do. One of the conversations we had with Evo was that the new events that they introduce, whether or not that's new donation events, but things that are clearly and almost leaning towards veterans now, because things are getting harder, and like the PvE is getting more immersive, and you need to genuinely be coordinated to do. There's lots of new events that go out. Do we have any suggestions for what events or game modes that could be introduced that we think would be quite fun?
Yeah, the one that I would really like, that again would probably be too much for an event. It'd probably have to be a permanent, more weekly game mode or something like that. But it would almost be a never-ending battle in a very large map. That it would be, the size of the map would be about 2 field battles with 2 siege maps joined together, and then you'd probably have three castles, and then obviously a lot of land in between them, and then you'd load in with teams. So you'd have 15 obviously in each castle, and it's kind of up to you to go and raid someone else's castle or defend yours or whatever. And then when you're out of units, you get deployed out of the game. And once you're deployed out of the game, a new person gets cycled into your team. And it's just a never-ending game mode that you go in, you use your units, you have a bit of fun, you go and raid their castle, you kind of can plan with the people you're with. Might even inherently make people talk to each other in siege match, say, hey guys, we are going to head over here now. You two or you guys stay here, defend this just in case, and us 10 are going over there.
So,
or it goes mad, and you all just scatter and go and annoy the other 2 places. It's almost I think it could be an interesting one just to have.
It's definitely an interesting one.
Sometimes I don't want to leave the siege. Where you're in there and you're like having a really good time. You're like, why? I just wish this wasn't ending right now. I'm gonna have to sign up again, new things, and I just think it'd be quite cool.
Definitely is an interesting idea, but how would you do the teams like? Would you do it as randoms, or would you potentially even do it as houses that could sign up to it? So you have a castle as your house's base, so to speak, and anyone from your house can join the queue.
I think that could be a cool way of doing it.
Or...
Yeah,
because then it could be a weekly event, kind of like Territory Wars. It's like a weekly event, maybe, rather than something that's regular. So it's at a set time, where it's like, okay, you sign up as your house, you have your base. Maybe you could even use, if we join it with your idea, use the house resources to upgrade the castle that you've got, whatever it is.
I just think it would be I think you could do both. You could have one that was random, as we could even get into touch on what we were talking about ages ago. That was obviously the people getting into TW. Like you could even have this as a bit of a training for that, in a way. But yeah, I think you could do randoms or houses. But I think it could make a really interesting thing, because you've got 3 castles and 2 enemies per team, and it's just kind of working out what's going on. And I just like the idea of kind of a siege where you can be in there for ages. And if it was randoms, it could be really funny, because you could set up things like, let's all go Falcos on the wall, and we are defending our castle with just this. And yeah, I just like the idea of it. It'd be almost a battle royale without the shrinking thing and without the collecting of things. Or you could have the collecting resource. You can make it like OPR in New World. That would be, OPR is the outpost rush, where you have to collect resources, upgrade your base, So you would jump out of your city, collect resources, jump back in, upgrade cannons, that sort of thing. And then there's other bases that the enemy's doing the same, and then you raid each other, and it's an interesting little game mode.
I think they could introduce, like, if we had that never-ending game, you almost have a red team versus blue team, and on it you could say you need to do 5 minutes of pushing the objective on, or get 40 capture points on blue team, and 40 capture points on red team. So it encourages you to play both teams. But at the end of the week, you could say, right, anybody that put more time into blue team gets more artillery, and they get like a weekly reward.
Yeah.
And I'd have it almost like a game mode that naturally resets itself. So you could have like blue team have to push into red territory and then take something from red territory back to the middle. And once they've done that, they get a point. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to build the most points over the time. You can't be on all the time.
Just like a capture the flag kind of game mode as well. Like,
you could also have it so like one team doesn't get overwhelmed. Let's say we're really just completely dominating someone's castle. As we're in their thing, their AI ramps up. So they're all dying, but suddenly we've got winged hussars coming out that aren't players. Like similar in the
like in the Colosseum mode where they had the
Colosseum,
really strong,
exactly.
So they've definitely got the features there for it.
And
getting dominated.
Another asset I'd love them to use is, do you remember in the Ottoman season where you had to push the boat?
Yes.
Oh, yes.
That was really fun.
Imagine if you've got that kind of mechanic where you're trying to take like a prized Trojan horse coming out of one person's city, and you've got to wheel it back to the middle. And when you do that,
even just piggybacking on that, sorry to interrupt, but do it as a way of reinventing field battles.
Yes.
So you've got the 3 control points, but have the 2 outer control points be inside cities each, and then the middle one is a contested point where you go between. Or even, like you said, have an objective you've got to push between. Maybe it's a battering ram. So there's a battering ram in the middle. Whoever's controlling point pushes towards the enemy gate. Otherwise, there's no way to kill their gate, and you have to only climb ladders or something.
I think Trojan
something like that could be a way of. But my point though is that it's a way of opening their gate to get into their castle. So whoever controls that middle point and pushes it, then they get the advantage of having the open gate. Whereas otherwise, you've got to try and climb ladders. Some way like that to reinvent the field battle, which is kind of a dead mode at the moment.
Yeah, it is dead. And I love the idea that there's, you go into normal siege, one team, you're heading that way and you're attacking them, and the other team, we're defending this. I love the idea that you'd get in and there's not really a defined thing for you to, like, you have your thing. You might be attacked or you might be attacking them, depending on what your team wants to do. You've got your 2 castles. Yes, we can add extra things in to incentivize it. So, like, as you said, with the Trojan horse, you could go, okay, we can get some points by pushing this into their city, something like that, or pushing the battering ram up to their gates. But there's definitely something to be said for something that you're not like instantly on defense or attack. You just are not really sure straight out the gates.
I don't know about you guys, but some of the most fun games I've had as a defender is when you play more like an attacker. You're really aggressive, pushing into the enemy, where a lot of times you don't have that. People go, well, I'm on defense, I've got to sit here and wait for them to come to me. Whereas a mode like that, where it's like, well, I could sit on defense, but also I have the option to go attack and win the game that way. Because as a defender, you can't really win by attacking unless you run out of time. There's nothing you can go and take.
A large number of players play the game have sallied out on Sun City at the start of a fight with Cav at least once in their gameplay. And when you do it, you're like, this is so great. But also when it happens to you, you're just like, this is quite frustrating. So when you've almost got that permission to play the game however you want to play, it might be non-meta way of playing it, where you're very aggressive when realistically you've got some really strong defensive positions. Just encouraging that and letting people find niches and find new tricks of way of playing it. Allow the game to innovate itself.
It's a double sally as well. You could have that field battle thing that has been lost would be back, because you might have 2 teams come out of their castles and both sally each other, not knowing that they're both about to sally each other. And then you've got this madness that's like bloody Game of Thrones Battle of the Bastards, where you've got the cav all smashing into each other, 2 castles looking at each other, and it's suddenly reinvigorated field battles in a way that is so healthy for the game. And you make them longer. If they're not infinite, you just make them longer. Like, you make these things 35, 40 minutes long. So
and you have the ability to drop in and leave. I do think that would be really good. Yeah, you can you leave and new people come in. It's not like, oh God, we've lost someone. You are likely that you will be coming into one of these battles halfway through it or a quarter way through it. And I think that's fine. I think if it's a 40-minute battle, nobody minds that.
You guys wouldn't
there's
mind,
other
but
games do it with their matching, but I think this all again boils back down to the fact that I don't think this would work with the current player base. We just don't have the numbers there for it, and that's one of the biggest issues that this game
Yeah.
has right now is just the player base, the level of player base that's there, just the numbers of players playing the game.
I think if it was advertised well, I think it really could be the new Siege if it was done properly.
Yeah, I
So,
mean,
like,
if it's
I
a
think it
timed
would
event,
overtake
I
it.
think it would be fine. But I think if it's just an event that's on all the time, I don't think it would work. Like if it's just open for like a few hours, I think it needs to be a timed event on set days at set times. Then it could work. But it's
Do you
then
think they
also
should-
how do you reward players for playing that? Do you do it because obviously I might be in the fight for a minute, get a good charge, but die, and then I'm out until I queue back up again. Could be in a different game. Do you do it where you join, like you said, you pick a side, so you're either blue or you're red, and then however well that team does overall, you get rewards based on that. Doesn't matter how long you've played for, as long as you've been in the game, you get that reward. Because that could be a way of doing it. Because otherwise, if you do it as you've got to be in this fight so much time, you've got to do so much. You'll have people just slot blocking because they want to try and get the max rewards. So there's got to be a way of balancing that so it's fair for everyone, and you encourage people to be aggressive.
Maybe you can have
Yes,
a progression in quests similar to how they did the one with the Naraka Blade Point, where you went and you did one quest and then you go hand it in, you get given another challenge, you dive straight back in, we're going to continue the fight, but I've got another objective to play, and you just kind of hop back and forth. I think that would be an exciting and fun game mode for me.
I'd love that. I'd be in that quite a lot.
Oh, definitely, it sounds good.
Right, I think that's a nice kind of exploration into ideas, potential, and also just kind of shows that we do care and we do enjoy the game and we want it to succeed, but we got to recognize the state of the game that we're currently in. I think it would be really nice now to kind of wrap up our ideas about what a new player experience is, some of the new things that we think the game should have, and where we think the game should focus on for like a decent amount of time. I recognize that no changes are going to happen overnight, but we need to act relatively fast to allow this game to reach its potential. So
Yeah,
starting on it from a new player point of view, what do we like? Plum, if you want to go first.
I like. I think it's good out the gates that you're starting off with AI. I think that's obviously a account with the fact the player base is kind of small. I also like the fact that when you get to a certain level, you get funneled in with maybe 3 players aside. It definitely puts you into the groove of starting to play against real players smoothly because you're not going against a 15 stack. You've got 3 people, and you notice the difference between these players and the AI 100%. And then you end up targeting these players. Okay, he's an AI, stay away from him, or let's go for him because he's the real player. I think there's a lot. I don't have too much greatness to say about the new player experience. Is the thing that's probably it, because the F4s I think have been good, but as we said earlier, you complete half of them by not even focusing. So yeah, I think they could do a lot with, especially like skill points and stuff like that. I think there's a lot of chopping and changing weapons, and a lot of people have no idea what skills they're going for, and yeah, so I think there's a lot to be done.
Mm-hmm. Temple.
I think from a new player perspective, I think the game has come a long way. It is a lot easier now for new players, but there is still a lot of work that needs to be done. So I'd say from a new player perspective, the game, it is fun to play when you first start because like you said, you're playing as AI, you're having a good time, you're farming a lot of stuff. But then the negatives, like you said, is then once you get to that certain level, it's a completely different game. And there needs to be some better guidance there, or better, again, matchmaking is just down to the player base. So I think it falls down to the same thing we spoke about in the last episode, which is they need to market this game again. They haven't been doing, at least from our perspective, they haven't been marketing this game at all for the past 5 or 6 seasons at least. We haven't seen anything. And they just need to get that done to get the player base in to be able to start improving a lot of stuff. Because a lot of the gripes people have with the game at the moment will be improved with just a higher player base number.
Until you get new players versus new players for a decent amount of time, I don't think you're going to get a real shift in how the players will experience the game. I think you're completely right. I like that they have introduced the F4 quests. I do think they are a really nice way of doing it, and I like some of the tutorials they have. Yeah, they might be a bit boring if you know how to play the game, but as we know with very high level players, when they are introduced to a mechanic and everyone else knows it around them and they don't, you question why they don't. There's not been that hand down of knowledge. So I'd love to see a better way of handing down veteran knowledge into new players. And I don't know how to implement that, but I do think that would be something to definitely aim for.
Maybe a buddy system would be quite cool. A buddy system.
I think a buddy system for an advertising campaign makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
But I think even maybe it's just a jump on the back of that. Have it where veteran players get rewarded for pairing up with lower level players. Maybe if you have a player under a certain level in your group, you get bonus rewards or something. So it encourages that play together, where they can then support that player and answer questions for them. It'll be difficult to balance. Obviously, matchmaking, as we said, is awful at the moment. But if they could do something like that to encourage the older players to play with newer players, it will help improve the system.
Mm-hmm. So
yeah, I agree.
What do we think the focus for certainly the game should be in the next season, next 2 seasons?
I think first off, like as we're just talking, growth is the main thing. They gotta market it. It has to. We're gonna need to see some players coming in quickly. Really, it needs fresh blood. It needs people. Because it needs people to see it. It's such a good game. Like it is so unique and so much fun. And there's a reason why we all play it so much. So it must be good in some way. It just hasn't been marketed. People don't know about it. I tell friends what I'm playing, and like, what's that?
Yeah, I have all the time people are like, oh, what are you playing at the moment? I'm like, oh yeah, it's this really fun game. But it's difficult to explain because it's kind of like this, it's kind of like that, but it's really unique and it's so much fun. I mean, there's a reason people like myself put in like 7,000 plus hours into the game because it is such a fun game to play.
Mm-hmm. And I think the issues we raise with the new player experience get solved by there being more of them. So
yes,
if there are more new players, a lot of the issues will be there. And there's the old adage that if you build the home, they will come. If you make it a hospitable place for new players, and you make that there are special arrangements for them, such as safe regions where they can practice mechanics and learn and get that bug, get that almost not quite addiction, but the craving to then pursue this further. You make that space for them, and people will come and fill it. Evo raised a really good point that a large number of players are going to have played this game before and have moved on because poor performance in the past. The game is performing the best it's probably ever been, and the balance is probably the best it's ever been. It's the most diverse in terms of champion and unit pool that we can really access. There's cool units. There's a playstyle for everyone. It's got the attraction, but no one knows it exists.
I'm not sure how they go about that. I think the event they did with that other game a few weeks ago was really good. Yeah, I even checked that game out and had a look at it. I didn't download it, but I had a look, and it looked very fast paced. But I'm sure on the opposite side, I don't know if they had an event that was like the Conquerors. They looked up and they saw the Conquerors Blade up there. I don't know if a lot of those players would have looked back at Conquerors Blade and been like, I'll give that a try. But I think at least that said they were doing something, doing a little collab with them.
And the only thing I would add on that is that that's actually still run by Booming, I believe that game is. So it's the same company that.
Okay.
So that's why. But again, it drew more eyes to it. It was it was exciting. It was new, and the stuff they brought in was good as well. Like the Riot Act mode, like that. The game is heading in a really good direction. It's improving. It's just that player base.
Just the player base.
I don't know how they get that though. Do they go to a top streamer and pay money to play it? I don't know if that's the right strategy, because I think that's. I think a lot of people see that as not a positive thing these days.
I think with this kind of game, it's not really the way you do it.
Yeah,
I think you let the game speak for itself. You let people play those sieges and go, "Wow, this is fun," and that should keep people. Or that I honestly think if you make it the best experience it can be, players will stick around. Where in the past it's not been a great experience, and players have touched it and left, never to reinstall it again. I unless we've got any other points, I do think that really, on somewhat of a negative, sums it up. Because we do really care about this. We do want it to succeed, and we came up with some amazing ideas as well of where we can go.
I just want to say that I think obviously we all, complain about this game a lot, especially me on stream. It's basically my stream trait. But yeah, we do love this game.
But you complain because you care and you want to see it be where it should be.
About it. And I think it's so unique and so much potential that is the reason why we all stick around, and we all, you guys are making a podcast because you love it so much, and I think that's a fantastic thing. I make videos on it because I love it, and I want more people to play it and more people to see it. So, if we're going to end on a positive note,
that's a huge positive. Plum, thank you so much for your time. Where can people find you?
I'm pretty much on Twitch most days, apart from the weekend. And then my YouTube channel is Plumsion TV. So my Twitch is just Plumsion. So yeah, if you want to come and check it out, jump on in.